Don't act rashly, and remember what I told you, although they are all ordinary people, they have the ability to kill anyone. Stay safely inside, and I'll resolve the situation as quickly as possible, then come to rescue you." The young man quietly conveyed this information as Su Chi left. Even though he had been unable to understand the messages from the pocket watch before, leaving him clueless about the real identity of this guy, the higher-ups at the Security Bureau had just detected that the other party was in possession of a World Tree Withered Leaf, one of the Heavenly Destiny people, so naturally he had to protect him. The status of Heavenly Destiny people was by no means simply a symbol of identity. Each of the Heavenly Destiny people was, as the name implies, chosen by destiny, handpicked by fate, to bear this mission, according to strategies deployed by the World Tree Project in past eras. Their requirements for Heavenly Destiny people were very strict. In addition to strength, every Heavenly Destiny person possessed excellent moral qualities, such as integrity, kindness, and courage. Thus, once the young man confirmed Su Chi's status as a Heavenly Destiny person, he immediately began to instruct him seriously. Su Chi gave an okay sign, revealing an innocuous smile as if to say, "Don't worry, I definitely won't make a mess of things." The robbers then selected more than 30 people one after another and led them towards the passageway into the underground vault. Some people's legs were trembling so much that they couldn't walk, and the group of robbers simply shot them in the thigh. Hostages screamed in pain and were then dragged inside. The young man watched this unfold, and sure enough, it was just as that guy had analyzed. They had come to create chaos. This was no ordinary crime. They had the support of those demons behind them. To be accurate, nearly 90% of the city's crimes were related to them. However, since there was crime, there was also the City Security Bureau, the organization the young man belonged to. The young man slowly swung his pocket watch, its black and white parts changing once more because the target was no longer Su Chi, but the entire city. Black and white appeared to be at war, struggling against each other as if trying to determine a victor. "Come here and move the items from within the vault," a robber commanded with the dark barrel of a gun, threatening the 30-some hostages. After all, this was the largest bank in the entire city, its scale and level evident from the splendid lobby outside as well as the identities of countless wealthy patrons. There even were private security forces, but they were promptly dealt with by the well-trained, ruthless robbers. As Su Chi looked at the vast vault, its immense space was visible to the naked eye, filled with large amounts of gold, cash, and various protected areas housing antiques of inestimable value, the high-valued possessions stored by the rich in the bank. There was a large quantity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have called in over 30 hostages just to move things. Indeed, the robbers had come for the money, but at the same time, they also harbored other motives, which appeared to be the destruction of everything here. "Do you want to live?" one of the robbers sneered. "Then move quickly. The fastest will survive. Anyone who dawdles will only face death." That was a lie. From the question mark above their heads, Su Chi glimpsed their internal, true thoughts. The bomb had been set up already, and its yield was terrifying. It was because of hatred for the rich as much as their own brutal mentality, and also, there was someone behind them guiding them to do this. Tisk. While moving, Su Chi muttered softly, "Mr. Luo, what do you think is going on here?" "Luo Shenfu. I'm not sure. Robbers, the Security Bureau, police, and so many ordinary people. How could they possibly exist in a place like the Ancient Gate, which forever revolves around two themes? That is, the present world and the abyss. After all, the Ancient Gate is the convergence of the ancient battlefield, the place where the gods of the present world, the extraordinary, and the abyss clashed and perished together in the last battle. According to Luo Shinfu's recollection, the final battle centered around that cluster of star systems had left millions of worlds in the vicinity barren and lifeless. It was impossible for these ordinary people to exist. Moreover, these robbers are not at all like the demons of the abyss. But if the demons of the abyss are supporting them from behind, then it becomes clear, Su Chi said softly. The Security Bureau controls the present world. The sprawling web of criminal activity in the city is the abyss. Of course, this is just my speculation, Suchi said, picking up a piece of gold. I'm thinking about what the young man told me. Why, it cannot result in massive damage or a high number of deaths. What about the chaos tonight? And they seem to be bound by some rule. Listening to Suchi's analysis, when Luo Shinfu heard the word rules, he couldn't help but recall the Last Gate world. You mean the black and white bear? Suchi said softly. Who knows? We can only understand what's going on here until we have solved this current event. At that very moment, the dark muzzle with a dangerous air pointed directly at Suchi. What are you doing? Put down the gold and properly move it outside. Otherwise, I don't mind finishing you off right here. The robber's ghost mask held a certain sharpness and brutality, eyes filled with coldness and murderous intent. Holding a piece of gold in his hand, Suchi spoke lightly. Gold is a very scarce mineral. Its birth occurs under extreme conditions in space. Gold is formed from hydrogen elements inside stars through nuclear fusion reactions, eventually synthesized during a supernova explosion. Bang! The robber pressed his finger on the trigger and pulled without hesitation. Not one of them was any stranger to murder, and they sure as hell weren't about to waste words on some weakling. This young punk in front of them perhaps thought he could stay cool under pressure, or maybe he was just out of his mind, spouting these meaningless yet self-proclaimed romantic speeches. But he wasn't going to give the guy another chance to speak. The bullet shot out, carrying his cold intent to kill. However, in the next moment, Suchi simply tilted his head, and the bullet whizzed past his head. The robber's face turned pale with shock, dodging bullets, and Luo Shinfu found it rather odd. Why did you dodge? In his view, for someone of the 7th rank, a thin layer of spiritual energy should have easily stopped the bullet. Suchi spoke indifferently, because if I didn't dodge, I'd be dead. Question mark. Their weapons are problematic. They don't have much strength, but they carry a lethal aura, Suchi explained lightly. Luo Shinfu furrowed his brows. I didn't feel any spiritual energy or special power on it. Those firearms were just ordinary. Suchi looked up at the question mark. Bullets blessed by rules. Anyone hit by them will suffer the same damage as ordinary people, disregarding all spiritual energy defenses. These are bullets, under the rules. Suchi glanced at the many robbers, his expression darkening, menace pervasive. And I believe it's not just the bullets. The other effects are deadly too. No wonder that guy told him not to make any moves or be rash, placing such stress on the fact that although these people were ordinary, they each posed a lethal threat. Mr. Riddle, would it kill you to say more? Suchi composedly watched as everyone raised their firearms, aiming at him without hesitation, ready to pull the trigger. The many hostages all had faces filled with terror, but Suchi wasn't panicked. He simply paused and pondered. It seems that guy also said not to kill too many people. He reached out his hand. Silence of all things activated. At that moment, everyone who wanted to fire found their guns jamming in unison. All mechanical parts malfunctioned. Their faces turned. Suchi extended his hand. Though they have lethal power, they are still ordinary people at their core. A dark star shuttle quietly began to dance. At his soft whistle, in a breath's time, a red light with a tail flashing through the vault space was seen piercing through at high speed. Peft, peft. The sounds were continuous. In the blink of an eye, all the robbers had fallen into pools of blood. The hostages trembled as they witnessed the scene, and suddenly someone screamed because they saw various dangerous bombs strapped to the robbers. There are bombs, but they seem to have stopped, malfunctioned, and the wires, they all connect to the heart. As they discovered the bombs, their hearts tightened, but then seeing the bombs didn't explode, they regained some calm. Quite the player. Suchi quietly recalled the flying shuttle, observing that all the bombs had been inserted into their chests. He mused to himself. As soon as the heart stops beating, they would all activate and explode. If he hadn't been able to make them all malfunction, they probably would have triggered an immediate explosion. a chain reaction through external signals controlling them, along with various other large bombs placed around the bank. It would have blown the whole bank apart in an instant. This was not the work of robbers, but more like someone was using them to engage in terrorist activities and attacks. Su Chi probably already knew some key information, but he did not immediately draw a conclusion. After all, the people who knew the answers were already in action, and he would soon find out. About 5 minutes later, there were bouts of minor disturbances outside, and then silence ensued. The steady footsteps of a young man quietly echoed in the corridor as he led a group, armed personnel in special uniforms. They had already dealt with the robbers outside directly and cut off any means of communication. The instructions from above had been to prepare for the crowd's evacuation. It was time for a quick and decisive engagement. The young man gave a tactical hand signal. His people crossed over in a sudden rush. But the next moment, only Su Chi was sitting in front of the vault's counter, with numerous hostages being forced to queue up in front of him, signing documents. "You guys, coming in like this, isn't it a bit too grand?" Su Chi paused. "The robbers." The young man hesitated, looking at the bodies inside the vault. "Did you take care of all of them?" Su Chi. "What else?" "You managed without any injuries or casualties." The young man narrowed his eyes. "Nicely done. Even though you didn't take my advice, it seems you were well aware of the danger involved. But what are you doing now?" Su Chi. "Don't ask if you ask. It's just everyone thanking me, voluntarily going out of their way to write me some words of thanks and inconsequential gifts." The young man silently watched them sign all sorts of share transfer contracts, asset contracts, checks, and so on. "Are you sure they are voluntarily thankful?" He seemed to realize that this heavenly destiny person before him was somewhat different from the others. When Su Chi and the young man left through the corridor, outside, a large number of police cars had stopped, and plenty of armed personnel were cleaning up, dismantling various bombs, and eliminating hazards. The young man seemed different from these people. After nodding to them, he opened a car parked at the roadside and sat in the driver's seat. "Get in. The incident here is over. It's no longer our concern. I'll take you to our real headquarters." Su Chi looked at the officers, most of whom were ordinary people. Only 3 or 4 people, like the young man, had a certain strange quality among them, directing the situation but holding back. "So, this city is actually just a city full of ordinary people, maybe with a higher crime rate, but it seems there is no difference." Su Chi spoke lightly. "Apart from the fact that any of their weapons can harm us." The young man paused, then chuckled as he drove. "You have a sharp observation. Indeed, this is an ordinary city, but in reality, it's also our battlefield with the abyss." "Like what?" the young man said slowly. "You and the other heavenly destiny people should have already experienced other gate worlds. The ancient gate is ever-changing, the so-called struggle between the abyss and the current world power, yet presents itself in various forms. And our focus here is the city's stability rate. Question mark. He reached out his hand and handed a pocket watch to Su Chi. Su Chi looked at the sharp contrast of the black and white fluids inside, the ripples oscillating within. This was what the young man had been watching all along. Just like this pocket watch, the black represents the abyss's traces, their recovery strength. Any increase in the city's collapse rate, whether it's crime, suicide rates, all kinds of death, destruction, and other negative crises, will cause the black to grow. Su Chi paused. "The white, that's the present world's power." "Exactly. Our city security bureau is responsible for handling these crises and stabilizing the city." The young man paused. "And there are various restrictions. We and the beings from the abyss cannot directly participate, burst forth with powers that do not belong in this city to solve everything or cause destruction. Otherwise, we will face punishment from that existence." Su Chi raised an eyebrow. "Black and white bear?" "Yes," the young man nodded. "This includes the fatal rule damage to us by any ordinary person's weapons, which is one of the restrictions. No wonder they don't use their strength and conceal their identities while wielding weapons." "Then I understand. Basically, it's a strategy management game. The present world and the abyss are jointly managing this city. Su Qi paused. The young man. Although it's strange to compare it to a game, you have to admit it's quite apartment. Su Qi slowly watched the pocket watch, the fluids underneath, and the gently tickling hands. But what does this time represent? The young man drove and looked at the sun hanging in the sky ahead. It signifies, once nighttime arrives, this management game turns into a gruesome horror game. Su Qi was in the car, speeding along the highway. It was, so to speak, the journey to the so-called headquarters. City Security Bureau. According to the young man, although this city boasted a population of several millions, with an immense scale and complete social functions, having intact systems for economy, politics, and culture, the truth was, they were all merely mirrored flower water moon, NPCs generated from the old days. It was them, the people from the present world and the abyss, who were the living beings truly fighting within. However, Su Qi found it quite interesting. It was a confrontation that didn't necessitate fighting, involving urban security, social governance. Furthermore, Su Qi looked at the countdown on his pocket watch. The peace of the city by day seemed to determine the advantage gained by both sides amidst the chaos of the night, which was why these people were so desperately working in the shadows to maintain or disrupt the urban order. The car continued its smooth drive. Since the beginning, Su Qi had noticed all the various hidden patterns inside the vehicle. The car had obviously been modified, emanating an aura belonging to spiritual energy. As long as ordinary people don't discover our power, it's not considered breaking the rules. The young man had responded in this way, and he chatted with Su Qi sporadically. Su Qi had also learned that the man's name was Anan, and judging from his sequence, the man's original strength was merely 7th rank. His appearance in this land of slumber for countless extraordinaries and demigods was quite surprising. Soon, Su Qi saw the city security headquarters, which was also sizable, housing not only armed personnel but also bringing together an abundance of societal functions. Let's go. Anan led the way, seemingly familiar with every person there. Of course, Su Qi had noticed they were all ordinary people without powers, or in short, generated NPCs. And as they walked, Su Qi's eyebrows raised slightly, for the first person with a fluctuation of spiritual energy aura, similar to Anan's, appeared. He was a middle-aged man, his expression solemn and carrying the dignity of a superior. Su Qi looked at his head, which had a demigod question mark floating above it. The man didn't look at Su Qi or Anan, passing by calmly, but as he did, a voice softly emerged. Lord Anan, don't involve yourself tonight. A middle-aged man with a fierce scar on his face whispered gravely. The balance has already tipped today. Tonight will become very dangerous, and with the arrival of those perilous abyss beings, nothing is predictable, your safety. Anan frowned but did not respond, calmly proceeding with Su Qi. Let's go. It's time to get in the elevator. Su Qi's eyebrows twitched slightly. To be honest, they were using a way of sound transmission, and although his own spiritual power was quite high, it was only at the level of Sequence 6. Moreover, given that the middle-aged man in front had demigod strength, eavesdropping was impossible for him. But that didn't stop the information from jumping out occasionally. A demigod calling a 7th-rank lord. Su Qi looked at Anan, who had entered the elevator first, with great interest. Seeing a young, low-sequence face in the land of old days was strange in itself. After all, in the last battle, those who could participate were at the minimum extraordinaries, with others engaged in large-scale battles in the countless lower worlds. However, it wasn't important. Nowadays, any youth from the new era entering the ancient gate came with various bloodlines, backgrounds, heritages. Without such powerful labels, no matter how talented one was outside, they would pale in comparison here. It seems Anan is also a divine son, and quite an extraordinary one at that. Su Qi mused to himself. There were differences even among divine sons. Like Bei Shenxing, that guy, he wasn't comparable to divine sons like Du En at all. Du En was just a distant descendant of the pigeon god. Not to mention that the pigeon god's power wasn't all that high among the divine, the dilution and distance of the blood. It couldn't compare to the direct descendants of divine sons. Furthermore, it appeared Bei Shenxing was a young master from one of the powerful clans with many gods. And Nan also came from a background with a demigod as a subordinate. In the end, this world is all about backgrounds. Su Qi couldn't help but miss the years when evil god had pushed him up the ranks. Of course, this time it seemed not to be a ranking that was being beaten but himself. Because we can't be discovered by ordinary people. The real place isn't on the surface top floor, but somewhere else. And Nan reached out, waved his hand with spiritual energy, and slowly a new button emerged on the top level of the elevator. He pressed it gently. The entire elevator roared downward, plummeting towards the ground. Su Qi barely moved, but he thought that the Bushin headquarters could perhaps incorporate similar secret passages in the future. Not for concealment, but for a sense of ceremony. Could be quite effective for impressing newcomers and showing off. And soon, after a muffled boom, the elevator doors had already snapped open. Here, this is our place. As soon as Nan opened the door, this floor was full of hidden departments, and people of all sorts walked back and forth, each with an aura of spiritual energy different from ordinary people, all busy and distressed. As if in this place, it wasn't the extraordinaries, the high sequence, or even demigods who were present, but rather a group of frantic, troubled workers. And Nan cleared his throat and said, "Follow me first." Su Qi followed the corridor, trailing behind Nan. Along the way, there were extraordinary individuals hunched over masses of documents, members of powerful races furiously tapping on keyboards, demigods focused on various funds, stocks, and bonds in the exchange, as well as departments managing welfare systems, unemployment insurance, and the like. Telephone rings were incessant. To be honest, it was quite the contrast. This place was nothing like what one would normally expect of demigods and the extraordinary. Su Qi took in the scene as well. He could tell. This confrontation was indeed unlike any before. This is our brain, the general commander who coordinates everything. And Nan paused, standing in front of a closed door. Let me take you inside. Of course, he had a lot more to say, such as the identity of the general commander, and that not every person of heavenly destiny could meet the general commander. It was the general commander who personally requested to meet Su Bushin by name. Also, a word of caution. And Nan hesitated before adding, when you're in front of the general commander, take it easy. The old one has quite the temper. Even with his background, he was extremely respectful towards the general commander, not daring to show the slightest offense. And Nan knocked gently on the door, heard a faint enter from inside, and then pushed the door open. General Commander, this is the person of heavenly destiny Su Bushin that I've brought over. Su Qi's eyebrows twitched, as the general commander in front of him was not human, but a cat sprawled on the desk, vigorously tapping the keyboard with its paws. Seriously, if it weren't frantically busy to the point its fur was standing on end, Su Qi might have thought the general commander had gone to the bathroom. Damn it, it was actually a cat. Please have a seat. I'm currently busy. The voice of the black cat in front was somewhat hoarse and solemn. Su Qi and Nan took their seats. With eyes narrowed, Su Qi looked at Nan with interest. Your general commander is actually a cat? And Nan shook his head, speaking seriously through telepathy. No, it's from an ancient and powerful divine race, the elemental devouring beast, a very powerful divine being. Su Qi raised an eyebrow but wasn't surprised. It indeed resembled Brother Cat, and he had never thought of it as an ordinary cat. And Nan said softly, as a descendant, you probably haven't heard these 3 words. After all, the elemental devouring beasts are exceedingly rare by nature and have faded away since the last Great War. Not to say I haven't actually heard of them. Without the protection of their race's god, they are also easily coveted, for each elemental devouring beast, even without having grown, is worth a galaxy. Not to mention they all possess extraordinary traits and potential. I hadn't realized elemental devouring beasts were so valuable. Had I known, I would have kept Brother Cat by my side for a ready emergency fund. Brother Cat? Su Chi. So, this elemental devouring beast ancestor in front of us is your general commander. He stroked his chin, mumbling to himself. But why do I feel this isn't very reliable? Although Su Chi could see that the cat ancestor in front of him was busy and earnestly tapping the keyboard and clicking the mouse non-stop. In fact, Su Chi glanced behind it to a picture frame bordered in fine silver, and with the powerful sight of his spiritual eyes, he saw a gaming screen. The general commander, the cat ancestor, was actually playing a game while everyone was busy to the point of exploding. Meanwhile, Anan was taking the opportunity to explain softly to Su Chi. We are all essentially a group of combat personnel. Although many powerful extraordinary beings, demigods, and the like possess tremendous strength and fear no battle. But as you know, managing a city is beyond our ken. Many demigods are only now skilled in computers, information, trade, etc., after much learning. At one point, the whole city was nearly brought to collapse, if not for the cat god. Su Chi's eyebrows lifted slightly. What? It wasn't always with you. Anan paused. Elemental devouring beasts excel at space, and the cat god general commander parachuted here. Parachuted? Is there a threshold? Not quite. Su Chi was somewhat astonished because according to Anan, this black cat had crossed over from the old days into this place. This absurd special ability, could it even tear apart the terrifying old days? Anyway, Anan seriously said, the general commander is really powerful. It is precisely because of it that our city now remains stable, without collapsing under the various layers of invasion from the abyss. Su Chi didn't quite agree. He squinted at the black cat, feeling that this was just too preposterous. It seemed to sense Su Chi's gaze. Or perhaps the game had finally ended. The black cat gradually stopped its paws, lifted its gaze calmly and solemnly, and let out a breath. Phew! There was a big loophole just now, but it's resolved at last. You've been waiting a while. Anan shook his head. We haven't been waiting long. Su Chi hesitated for a moment. And you could tell the work was intense. Even the keycaps popped off. Anan was used to it after all, since the style of the cat god general commander was just like that, often staying in the office for a whole day and quite fiercely at that. Plus, it wasn't easy for the cat god with its paws. The keycaps would pop off from time to time, and there was always a need to switch keyboards, mice, and the like. It's just... Su Chi picked up a keycap from the ground. QWR. Don't say it. These keys obviously get used a lot. The black cat's eyelids twitched slightly, somehow feeling guilty, but it didn't care and said calmly, "And go outside. I have something to discuss with this newcomer." All right. Anan was straightforward, but before he left, he suddenly paused. By the way, Elder Cat God? Question mark. Anan spoke earnestly. I must attend something tonight and will not stay here any longer. The black cat said indifferently, We'll talk tonight. Anan looked somewhat torn and reluctant but sighed and walked out, opening the door. After the door closed, Su Chi looked at the black cat, and the black cat looked back at him. The black cat assessed Su Chi. As an elemental devouring beast, it had an extremely sensitive perception of others of its own kind, given their scarcity and particularly unique abilities. And ever since Su Bushin appeared, it had distinctly felt a strong trace on him. Moreover, these traces gave it a strong sense of familiarity. The black cat's vertical pupils narrowed slightly. Kid, don't you have anything you want to ask? It hadn't seen through Su Bushin yet, but indeed discovered the presence of the World Tree Withered Leaf. Yet, it didn't care. A seventh-rank little fellow couldn't hide anything in its presence. Su Chi hesitated. I indeed have many questions. Like, that wave under the tower. Why did you run back when your teammates went in? You're a support. The opposition is attacking, and you're still casting skills to fix the rickshaw? And as an AP support, what's the deal with buying Infinity Edge? Each question struck the black cat god like a slashing knife. His pupils were truly dilating now. You actually saw that? Su Chi. Yes, not only did I see it, but just now your account was reported for acting, dragging the team down, and verbal abuse. It's already been banned. The black cat hastily looked at the screen, its eyelids twitching violently. F***CK. Damn it, really banned. It tore the space, cursing. Your mother's kiss? I have to open box. Then it paused, looking at Suchi in front of it, who was smiling but not smiling. It closed the laptop calmly. Now, let's talk about your issues. Quite the topic shift it was. I'll just say it. I've sensed a quite familiar aura on you. The cat god's paw calmly and authoritatively tapped on the table. You, as a descendant, seem to have had contact with my race? To be honest, there are variances in the personalities of the divine beings, but most are majestic, not to be looked directly upon, imbued with endless sanctity, inspiring awe in countless people. After all, to maintain the power of faith, their image has always been so. Only having met many divine beings did Suchi know that among the gods, there could be exceptions, such as the cat god before him. It was even sneakily clicking to appeal its banned account while questioning Suchi. Facing the black cat's abrupt change of subject, Suchi didn't mind. After all, it's not like I haven't seen a noob before. Just practice more if you're bad. He pondered and answered, Seems like there is such a thing, but I don't know which one you're referring to. This actually made the black cat pause for a moment. Its eyes and eyebrows slightly twitched, and its pupils became more serious. You've encountered other elemental devouring beasts? To tell the truth, it knew the situation of its kind better than anyone else. All the extraordinary beings had dwindled to a handful and were in the old days. As for the younger generation, amidst the vast present world and the passage of time, how many were still alive was even more of a mystery. Suchi was contemplating in his mind. The storm, the relation he had with Brother Cat, could be considered companionship by now, having saved a bunch of its kind in the anxious land before. But unlike Patrick, Brother Cat seemed to have its own mission to accomplish and did not choose to stay with the hustlers. However, Suchi still wanted to drag it into the pit. Not to mention Patrick, Brother Cat's potential and talent had already proven its race to be extraordinary. Plus, its terrifying abilities would enable some of Suchi's ideas to come to fruition. In other words, if the Hustlers sect wanted to formally reveal themselves, to securely stand in the present world without being easily annihilated by various manhunts, Brother Cat was an indispensable link. He looked at the black cat and showed a smile. Black cat. It didn't know why, but seeing that smile made it feel a bit uneasy, as if some trap was forming. It's like this, Suchi started, sitting down gently. It's a very short story. We fought together, developed a deep friendship, and when they were trapped, I saved them. Snap! The black cat had vacant eyes, as if it suddenly lost interest, raised its paw and scratched the keyboard on the table, directly interrupting Suchi. Stop, stop. Boring lies, what trapped? And you saved them again? Let's not even talk about whether this is the kind of relationship you humans like to form, the kind that's just out of social obligation. But none of this could happen. Suchi wasn't annoyed by the interruption and replied with a gentle smile. How so? Just a single point. The cat god lazily spoke, its paw moving gently and tore a rift open. Our strength as elemental devouring beasts lies in space abilities. Nothing can trap us. Little fellow, you're not underestimating our power, are you? I admit that, Suchi agreed, since the cat god before him relied on such abilities to tear through the old days and enter here. But, Suchi paused and stroked his chin. But what if they encountered a being much more powerful than themselves, against whom they had no defense? The cat god glanced at Suchi. Although you seem to trying hard in your explanation, young fellow, don't forget, before the recovery, in the present world, the highest power is only sequence 2. It confidently stroked its fur and laughed. Even if those youngsters of my race aren't opponents, this ability can preemptively warn and escape from high sequence. Suchi suddenly said, but what if it's higher? Cat god. Like 3 or 4 stories high. Suchi gestured with his hands. Or as tall as you. Stop nitpicking and splitting hairs. The black cat's pupils, amber in color, remained motionless, looking as though it had lost interest in Su Qi, turning its gaze to its own screen and blatantly typing on the keyboard, composing its account. Kid, you're a heavenly destiny people, so you should also know, where in the present world is there a revived god? Su Qi. Who says there aren't? Aren't the gods of the abyss gods? Black Cat truly raised its head this time. This kid is a bit too good at arguing. Indeed, almost all gods could not escape the fate of slumber, scattering their strength in the infinite collapse, sinking into the darkness, trapped in the old days. But there were also differences in strength among the divinities, with gaps no less than low sequence to extraordinary. And the only gods still in existence in the present world, who had not fallen into the old days, were those that even it felt fear towards no one else. Strictly speaking, what Su Qi said was not wrong. If they faced such beings, the youngsters of its own race would have no power to resist. But Brother Cat only raised its head for a few breaths before lowering it again. Divine gold! It made me mistype. Even a fool would know this was impossible, not to mention why the youngsters would approach that sealed land. To say that this fellow before it had saved them from the clutches of those terrifying top-tier deceit gods of the abyss. This was utter nonsense. Nonsense more outrageous than its level on gold. And at that moment, the black cat's paw on the keyboard suddenly froze, as it sensed a terrifying, resentful, and anxious presence. This presence. The black cat shivered, its fur standing on end, its pupils shrinking sharply, conjuring up an image of a red giant in its mind. It was an abyss god that brought tremendous fear and anxiety. It could never forget this presence, because it almost didn't escape from that horrifying god of anxiety. The black cat's eyelids trembled slightly as it looked up. The source of that presence was none other than Su Qi in front of it, looking innocently back at it. What are you looking at me for? What you just said, and this presence. What the hell is going on? For the first time, the black cat was so serious, it even closed the laptop screen. Account bans, account appeals, all could be shoved aside. Right now, the most important matter was what was in front of it. It had unconsciously. Its fur had puffed up, and it stared intently at Su Qi. Su Qi took in all its reactions. It seemed that even the divine, when faced with entities like the god of anxiety, would harbor such dread and fear. I told you, did I not? I rescued your kind. And the place where they were trapped happens to be where the god of anxiety resides. And I? Su Qi extended his arm, revealing the blood-red curse markings, was thus cursed by the god of anxiety. This was the first time Su Qi had voluntarily exposed the curse, mainly because previously he had only encountered abyss power, and none of the powers in the present world could deal with it. Moreover, this curse was not because Su Qi had saved Brother Cat and its kind, freeing them from their ceiling. It was merely because Su Qi had brutally beaten the god of anxiety, sealed him back into the coffin, and even left a mosquito to accompany him, causing the god of anxiety to rage madly and exhaust a great deal of vitality, leaving behind this curse. Anyhow, not only was the power of the evil god in the spiritual eyes acting up, but this curse, much like a bone-devouring worm, was also Su Qi's greatest lethal threat. Because once the blood fury value was full, the god of anxiety would reappear. Although there was still some distance to reach that point, Su Qi had to consider how to deal with it. He certainly did not want to confront two gods from the abyss then. The curse of the god of anxiety. Huh? Black Cat eyed Su Qi's arm, squinting. Indeed, such terrifying entities are generally taboo, not to mention the god of anxiety. Its very power is like that. Even a slight touch can spread the curse. Su Qi also responded with a smile. Indeed, in this dark zone, one also inadvertently comes across various curses. He did not care much about explaining, as the true situation was indeed too horrifying. However, Su Qi had misjudged the sensitivity of the elder of the elemental devouring beast. But something's not right. Suddenly, Black Cat leaped onto Su Qi's shoulder and thrust its paw forward, even though just a moment ago there had been only a wisp of blood essence escaping. Next instant, as if scared, a mass of blood-red apparitions emerged. At that moment, centered around Su Qi, the entire room's floor and walls crazily peeled off, and massive amounts of blood-red fire blazed wildly. All sorts of demons and apparitions appeared behind and below Su Qi, attempting to drag him into this torturous, anxious hell. And Black Cat was already shivering all over, its eyes filled with shock and suspicion at this scene. I already said, it was a minor curse. Su Qi, entwined by countless blood-red demonic apparitions, still maintained a smile and said, "Yet you insisted on unleashing it." Black Cat's fur bristled as it jumped back to the table. It being a god, an elder of a powerful race, was now somewhat dazed. Minor my ass. This curse carries the refined blood of the god of anxiety. It's a horrific curse made out of its extreme anger and madness. What exactly did you do? Su Qi, unbothered, pulled down his sleeve to cover it up, while the surrounding demons and anxious hell slowly dissipated. These were merely strange effects caused by the curse, which to Su Qi were not much of a big deal. Didn't I say? I saved them, and it seems I disrupted the plan of the god of anxiety. And then it turned out like this. Su Qi shrugged. At this moment, Black Cat, having heard the word plan, seemed to have some memories stirred. It said gravely, "Plan what plan?" "I don't know," Su Qi pondered. "When I found Brother Cat and the rest, they seemed to be imprisoned in an object that contained a great deal of energy." What Su Qi said was entirely factual, but taken out of context and pieced together, it was virtually inscrutable. The main reason for saying it this way was that Su Qi had realized that Black Cat seemed to have had an encounter with the god of anxiety and seemed to have experienced something unpleasant. Black Cat said solemnly, "The elemental devouring beast, in addition to its spatial ability, it also has the ability to devour and accommodate a large amount of dangerously modeled power, which is why we are named after elemental devouring. And furthermore," it looked toward Su Qi, "the power we devour can also be mixed together, to burst forth with even greater might. But the god of anxiety, it wants this all-devouring power of our elemental devouring beasts for its anxious moon plan." Su Qi, narrowing his eyes, said, "The anxious moon plan?" Simply put, it involves feeding its anxiety and curse into a large number of elemental devouring beasts, then using spatial abilities to leave numerous interconnected space wormholes throughout the present world. And then burst forth. Black Cat brought up an unpleasant memory, saying solemnly, "At that time, even the strong might resist, but countless weaker life forms will all fall into extinction." Su Qi paused. "But I've only seen less than 100 elemental devouring beasts. This number." Black Cat's paw slowly tore a crack on the table surface. "That's because all the other elemental devouring beasts have already died." Su Qi said nothing, listening silently to Black Cat's hoarse voice. "I was always an outlier, had separated from my race early on, becoming a demigod on my own. Afterward, when the Great War erupted, I just went to stir up some excitement. At that time, relying on my own ability, fearing neither heaven nor earth, I actively provoked the abyss power, continuously killing many demon demigods, and then I was targeted by the god of anxiety. This terrifying existence inexplicably pursued me, and with great difficulty and all my methods, I just barely escaped," Black Cat said calmly. "But that also marked the beginning of the disaster for the whole race of elemental devouring beasts." Su Qi softly said, "The strong spatial abilities and traits of the elemental devouring beasts you demonstrated seem to have caught its attention. And then, that's right." Black Cat's paws slowly rested down, and its tail also drooped. "After I became a god and went back to look, the race of elemental devouring beasts had been annihilated. Only a few, less than 1,000, seemed to have survived, but their whereabouts were unknown. Elemental devouring beasts, though rare, were a powerful race originally numbering in the millions but were exceedingly scarce in this dimension of the present world. Then I joined as an outer god in the confrontation with abyss power. allied with the occupants of the god's palace, and in the final battle also perished and ended up here. Black Cat's pupils, deep and profound, looked around here, entirely different from its previous demeanor of playing games. So that's how it is. A sudden recollection came to Su Chi. That seems to imply Brother Cat's identity is not so simple either. Perhaps it is even a divine son. He remembered Brother Cat, traveling around with Patrick everywhere, seemingly on some mission looking for something. And entering the anxious land was certainly no mere coincidence, but because it was actively searching for its fellow tribe imprisoned by the god of anxiety. Even more so, Su Chi could guess that behind Brother Cat, there were likely numerous survivors among the elemental devouring beasts hiding in seclusion. Everything seemed to be connected. The incident of Brother Cat appearing on Nancy's Love, Death, Superplayer wasn't really about being caught. After all, its ability could easily facilitate escape. It was merely deliberately exposing itself on the program, searching for its fellow kin. Anyway, Black Cat said softly, "Thank you anyway, for saving them. So, no matter how powerful the curse is, I will do everything I can to help you resolve it," it declared solemnly. Being an outer god and seeing its whole race of elemental devouring beasts annihilated by the abyss naturally induced an irreconcilable hatred. And now Su Buxian had also saved its few remaining kin. This favor was undoubtedly of utmost importance. Facing the god's promise, Su Chi was not overwhelmed but calmly revealed a smile. "Are you sure, Black Cat?" How come, in the middle of the day with the heating on, it felt a strange chill? At that moment, Bei Shinxing was in a large factory somewhere within the city. There was an abundance of evil aura and abyss power staring at him with cold, indifferent eyes. The five venerables spoke in a deep voice. "Bei Shinxing, what do you mean? You come and go as you please. Do you really think this place is somewhere you can walk around freely?" Bei Shinxing raised an eyebrow, faced the cold gazes of these venerables and their followers, and shrugged. "I just came to look for someone, but I didn't expect that he wouldn't be here at all. Since he's not here, why should I stay? But let me ask again, are you sure there isn't a venerable named Su Buxian here?" The venerables' faces turned grim. "Attack! Keep him here!" The five venerables, along with 10 followers, all made their moves, but Bei Shinxing just smiled. He stretched out his hand and numerous surveillance cameras appeared simultaneously, and video cameras also materialized. The faces of everyone there slightly darkened, and they immediately stopped their powers. "I have also investigated. This city seems not to allow powers beyond ordinary people's knowledge to be exposed, so you better take it easy." Bei Shinxing confidently walked towards the exit of the factory. The venerable's eyes were filled with intense killing intent, but they did not move, as he had said. Indeed, violating this would bring the extreme punishment of the black and white bear. "Should we just let him go? The abyss power will not let go of anyone who dares to oppose the abyss." A follower flipped through the dark scripture, noting Bei Shinxing's extraordinary powers, including the sole child of the god of formlessness, one of the 24 chief outer gods. And at this moment, the casually departing Bei Shinxing's face twitched, and sweat flowed down his forehead. "Damn it, Su Buxian, you damn venerable, you aren't even here. I said I came to find you. What the hell? I almost got myself killed." The venerables and followers are one thing. What's more important is the existences hidden within that darkness behind them, each one a demigod-level demon with a terrifying aura, and there were even extraordinary believers hidden among them. Although arrogant, seeing this scene made his heart skip a beat. After all, he truly had no right to challenge the real abyss power, even if the old fellow at home was a ruler of this world too. So, at the first moment, he told the group of abyssals that he was a good friend of Venerable Su Buxian. Since being a venerable was so distinguished, he should at least be given some face. But then, damn your mother's kiss. They all just frowned. "Su Buxian? Who is that?" The sweat soaked through Bei Shinxing's back. To be honest, if the other side wanted to detain him just now, they easily could, as many demigods suppressing him would have been more than enough. "Damn it, Su Buxian. Are you a venerable or not? Bei Shenxing cursed. And where the hell is this bastard now? At this moment, Su Qi and the Black Cat were still in secret discussions. So it is. Su Qi softly said, your ability can transcend the old days, but you can't leave the ancient gate, so you can only travel through the gate world. Then Nan is the son of one of the 7 gods of the God's Palace, so you were entrusted to come here to ensure his safety. Which one of the 7 gods? Su Qi asked curiously. The Wind Master. The Black Cat subconsciously answered, then paused. You wouldn't know him? Don't say. I actually do know him, having been his attending doctor. Su Qi's mind flashed to the man in the hospital room in Anxious Land who had been coughing, who was the Wind God, also known as Nan's father. Life is a circle. All right, don't ask about unnecessary things. The city's stability rate is rapidly declining. That's what really matters. The Black Cat seriously said. If we hadn't just been playing games, I would believe you. So what will happen tonight? Su Qi asked interestedly, as Nan hadn't clearly described the supposed danger of the night. The Black Cat squinted slightly. In simple terms, it's the citywide battle royale, with the Black and White Bear acting as the referee. The entire city falls silent, one side flees, the other chases. It stretched out a paw and waved a pocket watch. And who becomes the chasing side depends on Black and White, who dominates during the day. The participants' strength will be restricted to ordinary, only allowed to use various ordinary weapons from within the city. All spiritual energy and special abilities will be prohibited. Su Qi looked at the pocket watch. That means the key is to see the critical moment of mutual balance. If one overwhelmingly surpasses the other, the Black Cat ominously said, then you better pray for your luck. You might give the other side a bunch of machine guns. Understood. Su Qi snapped his fingers. After all, Black and White also represents balance. Whoever has more during the day will get better equipment during the night skirmish. So you guys have also experienced this numerous times now. How are the results? Su Qi asked. The Black Cat coughed. Under my brilliant guidance, not bad. What exactly does not bad mean? Su Qi was persistent in digging deeper. The Black Cat evasively looked away. Don't ask. Asking means that under my leadership, we've chased the abyss into running scattered like ducks. Su Qi looked at the information on the Black Cat's question mark. So far, the ratio of chasing to being chased is 1:10. He gave a thumbs up. Scattered like petals, impressive. Of course. The Black Cat swished its tail. We once each had a powerful rifle, even had hand grenades, causing the opponent to scatter headlong with no power to strike back. Su Qi looked at the question mark above the Black Cat's head. That was the strongest advantage. The rest of the time was just taking a beating. Su Qi knew. Even if one was killed within the ancient gate, it was just a wearing away of traces, and one wouldn't truly die. And for these powerful beings, demigods, with traces as vast as the stars and unchanged through countless years, there was naturally no need for concern. This was also why they wouldn't let Nan participate. After all, Nan was just a divine son, a 7th rank in terms of traces. He simply couldn't withstand the wearing of the old days. But to be honest, this track record was truly terrible. The city's operations and all aspects were completely suppressed. Having a gun in hand was already considered a good day. Just now, the Black Cat was quite proud, and Su Qi almost couldn't keep his composure, as he also realized that the Black Cat was really not good at command and management, and now it was completely letting things go. However, its escape ability must be maxed out, so on the side being chased, it always managed to turn danger into safety. Su Qi said softly, how much longer until the big escape starts tonight? Half an hour. Black Cat paused. But don't worry. You outsiders don't have to participate on the first day. It's officially starting tomorrow. After all, you have no experience. So by then you can act as an information collection point and provide support from outside. Black Cat said softly. This is also a part of the rules that are allowed. Within this city, information was naturally very important. Also, this is for you. Black Cat passed over a card. Since you are their savior, and I promised you, How could I not give you special privileges? Su Chi, I understand the principle, but what you've given me is a game recharge card. Cough, cough. Black Cat coughed a few times. Got the wrong one. This card allows you to pass freely in any department, and you can directly issue the highest commands. But remind you, although we manage in the name of the city's main office, all uses and travels also come from the city's production. This is also a part of the rules. Su Chi received the card with a smile. Simply put, they were also all part of the city. They couldn't arbitrarily alter any data or occupy public resources, all of which could affect the city's stability. But these rules aren't bad either. Otherwise, Black Cat would have probably already bankrupted the entire management department's income in the game. The night was quietly approaching. Now, Su Chi also finally understood why the bank closed so early. It was all game mechanics. He now, along with all Destiny people, was gathered together at the entrance of the Public Security Administration, looking outside at everything. This is the confrontation between the ancient great pioneers. One of the Destiny people sat next to Su Chi and softly sighed. Not just in this gate world, but also in countless other gates. Many heroes and powerful individuals of the present world are also suppressing the Abyss power. And we, as heavenly Destiny people, also carry an important mission. It's not that we're friends. I'm sitting here just fine. Why come over and strike up a conversation? But he lightly extended his hand, though with yellow hair and fox-like whiskers on his face. He smiled warmly and genuinely. Don't worry, you're not fighting alone. We come from all over the world, with the same mission. Then we are companions who advance and retreat together. This Destiny person wore a sunny and determined smile, with a genial atmosphere about him. Where's this hot-blooded comic male protagonist come from? Su Chi looked at the other person's smile. Like that of a hot-blooded comics male protagonist, it seemed only the word bond wasn't expressly mentioned. And the other person was indeed sincere in his heart, his words genuine, and the surrounding Destiny people also seemed to have firm expressions. Inside the ring, Luo Xinfu spoke slowly at this moment. Don't say, really don't say. These words are quite moving to all Destiny people. After all, each Destiny person starts out bearing a great mission and pressure alone, with no one to share with, and now finally having companions. Isn't that a source of emotion? Luo Xinfu said with sentiment. He himself was a bit moved. After all, he was talking about Destiny people, but at the same time he was also speaking about himself, having guarded the immortal path steel alone for countless years, with past friends and kin all perished. Indeed, Su Chi contemplated. I think it is necessary for Destiny people to unite within the Hustlers sect. Question mark. Are we even talking about the same thing? Luo Xinfu paused. By the way, you often mention the Hustlers sect, and until now I still don't know what kind of existence this organization is. Of course, it's the great organization that kicks the abyss, punches the evil god, and suppresses the universes in all directions. Luo Xinfu calmly said, Daozi, you're joking again. He had already become accustomed to Su Chi's personality, always fond of joking around. Although he believed Su Chi was still a great distance away from the powerful beings of the abyss, just a fearless newborn calf not afraid of tigers, not knowing the immensity of the heavens and earth. But after all, it's their own Daozi also considered ambitious. By the way, what did you say to that senior elemental devouring beast? Luo Xinfu asked with curiosity. As a Taoist guardian, his soul hidden within that ancient ring, although capable of deceiving countless people, facing powerful divine beings, Luo Xinfu naturally needed to be more concealed, so often at times like these he would choose to self-shield. It said it admires me and wants to bring all its tribespeople to join the Hustlers sect. Luo Xinfu. Sigh. Daozi was starting to talk nonsense again. Moreover, Daozi. He spoke softly. This heavenly Destiny people and the one named Bei Xinxing are both extraordinary. You'd better make connections with them. They have great destinies. Aha! This heavenly Destiny people seems to harbor the immense strength of a nine-tailed demon fox within him, which is a legendary divine beast. Bei Xinxing has an unusually strong divine force, surely with an astonishing background. No need to make connections, Su Chi said lightly. The Hustlers sect has always been open to all talents. All right, Luo Xinfu said helplessly. Let's talk about something serious. After this gate world, we'll surely obtain more keys, and I've closed off to study this key for a while. It's quite significant, carrying a breath similar to the core of the immortal path. Similar? Su Chi narrowed his eyes. You mean? Exactly, it might also be the product of some core. Su Chi understood. At this moment, the night had already fallen, and the city had become eerily silent, as if all the ordinary people who lived here during the day had vanished. Many old beings from the present world and the abyss had already entered the city. The Heavenly Destiny people stayed at the surveillance department of the city, watching countless sections on the big screen, quickly detecting the presence of the old ones. They immediately began to accurately contact each and every one of these ancient predecessors, conveying various information on a one-to-one basis. While Nan and many others who did not participate in this survival game were also making arrangements. After all, the number of people in a survival game was random. Speaking of which, what's your equipment this time? At this moment, Su Chi was also in contact with Black Cat. 3 barrels of oil, 5 armed vehicles, and 20 handguns with hundreds of rounds of ammunition, a bunch of long knives. Black Cat paused. Not bad. ? Su Chi said, I can't even imagine what sort of days you've lived through before. Ha, no big problem. Black Cat was quite calm. Once the bullets are gone, the guns are just scrap iron. In the end, it all comes down to the ability to run away. They had already begun to take action. Black Cat, though now just an ordinary cat, its various on-the-spot escape commands were key for everyone to repeatedly escape in the survival game. Su Chi watched Black Cat and the demigods, the strong ones, their familiar actions, stroking his chin. Did you know from the start that you would always be the ones being hunted, heading for an escape? So that's why you drag your feet ordinarily? Su Chi felt this was not acceptable. He stood up, and Nan was slightly startled. Where are you going? Me? I'm going to see what the fuss is really about with the usual commands. The beings of the abyss were now dressed in ink-black clothes, each face bearing tattoos with the pattern of the evil god, displaying a terrifying murderous intent despite possessing no strength. They had already boarded the vehicles, each holding several handguns, assault rifles, sniper rifles, and other fully equipped weapons, along with excellent bulletproof vests, bulletproof helmets, and all kinds of firearm accessories. Most importantly, they had several rockets, major weapons of destruction. Let's go. One of the black shadows, towering a few heads taller than the others, moved with an aura of death. Yes, Venerable One. This was the leader of the abyss in the gate world, a demon of a divine order. That old cat? It rasped. Don't let it escape so easily. Each great escape game had slightly different rules. The party being hunted needed to find a way to end the Great Escape game, whether by gathering items, escaping, or other means. And their role was to prevent all that, because the outcome of the Great Escape game would also affect the next day's city buff. It all depended on who could perform better when the Great Escape game ended. Additionally, there was another rule. If one side completely dominated the other, the Great Escape game would end entirely, and the losing side would be sealed. This confrontation that had dragged on for countless ages would also come to an end. Unfortunately, so far, neither side had managed to completely end this confrontational game. After all, no one had managed to wipe out the opposing side completely. As long as even one person from the escaping side survived, the city's Great Escape game would relentlessly continue day after day. Of course, it sneered coldly, currently holding an absolute advantage. That stupid cat had no chance of turning the tables. Today is just a warm-up. The most important thing is, this time, both the Heavenly Destiny people and the Venerables have stepped in here. It narrowed its eyes, a strange smile in its eyes. Such variables. According to Gate World and Black and White Bear's nature, there will inevitably be other decisive changes. Being a divine of the abyss, a demon under the evil god, it seemed even more aware of changes in the ancient gate. So, Let the slaughter begin. The faces of those from the abyss revealed cruel cold smiles as they began to mobilize, wielding various heavy weapons. At this moment, Su Chi was sitting in the Black Cat's office, opening up its computer. Don't tell, this computer's hard drive is quite large. But it's all stuffed with various files. Oh, 90% are games, no issue then. Su Chi navigated through a myriad of games, which, from their vast number, showed how long Black Cat had been mixing in here. Let me see. Su Chi examined the core internal files, reviewing a series of current information about the city. However, when he saw the flickering numbers, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This is, to be honest, although it was always jokingly said that this world seemed like a game, in actuality it was still a real, living city. But now Su Chi truly saw game data. Economy, public welfare, crime, environment, resources, all appearing in a very data-driven manner here, with various red numbers like warnings, indicating that the city's data was poor. And all these branches would converge into one thing. That was the World Index. It seems it and the black and white hands on the pocket watch previously are similar in synchrony. Positive numbers represent the present world having the advantage. Negative numbers mean the abyss power has the advantage. Luo Xinfu was also observing this scene at the moment. And now, being completely suppressed in all major data, just maintaining a deficit of over 50,000 isn't too bad. Su Chi muttered to himself. Oh, wrong. I missed a zero. Su Chi raised his eyebrows. Damn. Negative 500,000 world index. That guy only knows how to play games, just loafing around and waiting for death. Hey! A hoarse voice of Black Cat came through. I can hear you. You're too loud. My comment is something you should feel ashamed of hearing. I'm ashamed of nothing. Black Cat. I don't understand these things. Do you think those demigods, extraordinary powerhouses, understand? They are just muscleheads, had to learn on the spot when typing. Do you think it was easy for me to bring it this far? Black Cat bitterly complained. It didn't want to slack off. The key was that slacking off was useless. Sometimes making command adjustments could backfire. Not interfering could still maintain a decent index. Of course, the games were indeed fun. Sizz. Intense sounds of wind and noise also came from Black Cat's end. Apparently quite intense. Although I gave you the highest command pass, I know you'd be curious. Black Cat seemed to anticipate that Su Chi would look at those things, softly saying, but just take a look. It's very difficult to change anything now. Just prepare well for tomorrow's great escape game. Boom! Another sound of impact came from there. It seems it started on your side too. No big deal, I'm used to it, Black Cat said indifferently. Since I can't beat them in operation, I can naturally outpace them in running. All right. Saving the city by a curve, huh? Let's not talk about it, just take a look at those things for now. This place has long been controlled by the Abyss's operations. It's not that simple. Okay. Su Chi agreed outwardly, but after hanging up on Black Cat's side, he narrowed his eyes, looking at the various data above. I guess I feel like I could give it a try. This city had already become somewhat unbalanced because most of the wealth and resources were controlled by the rich, just like that bank Su Chi had observed before coming out, where vast amounts of capital circulated with only a tiny fraction flowing to the city. And the funds of the Management Bureau came from large amounts of tax revenue, yet this aspect had already been disrupted by Abyss, entangling many issues of tax evasion. They couldn't control this area because apart from the ancient powerful ones, other departments were already restrained by the many tactics from Abyss, a crucial point. Their resources and funds were leaking out along with many other restrictions. In any case, concerning the economy, pulling one thread moved the entire city. Similarly, it also affected all aspects. Every indicator did not exist independently. So, their main focus in work had always been on fighting disturbances. This aspect was precisely their strength, thus stabilizing the indexes. Are you sure you want to interfere? Luo Xinfu felt a tingling on his scalp as he watched. It was intricate and not as simple as imagined. After all, there were numerous restrictions. Indeed, trying to reverse this long-generating complexity, it certainly wouldn't be simple enough for just a day or two. Su Chi raised an eyebrow. But no need to rush. Let's just observe for now. The battle royale was still ongoing. The Black Cat's ability to escape was indeed top-notch. Its sharp commands and choices always narrowly evaded their encirclements and traps, escaping dangerous situations multiple times. However, once casualties appeared, no matter which side, the figure of the black and white bear would appear, dragging the killed individuals away with extreme punishment. Although the battle was fierce, the Black Cat also quickly found ways to counterattack with its followers. Its experience in this area was indeed sufficient, and they were approaching the moment to escape and end the battle royale. At this time, there was no need for them to consider the various pieces of information here. Many Heavenly Destiny people could only watch the surveillance screens above anxiously. You don't have to worry too much about them, just worry about yourselves, because whoever appears in this frame tomorrow night will be you, said the demigod who remained here gently. Of course, for you, I only hope that as many of you as possible survive. The Heavenly Destiny people and others said gravely, we understand. They were unlike these ancient beings. They likely had only one chance to survive the battle royale and leave this gate world, and also receive the rewards after the battle royale. Su Buxian, where do you come from? At that moment, Jeline sat beside Su Qi and softly said. They had already recognized each other earlier. Jeline seemed particularly interested in him for some reason. Me? I come from the verdant prairies of Fan Do Garden. Love Apartment 3602. Jeline was a bit stupefied by the continuous string of words, pausing briefly and then coughing. It sounds like a beautiful place. I actually come from a chaotic world filled with strife, hatred, and since birth, my parents were gone, leaving me alone, facing the village's hatred. So, seeing you alone, I felt something. Of course, most importantly, Jeline gently pressed his hand to his abdomen. I think I see in you a burden just as heavy as mine. This was not his subconscious or an illusion, but the power of the nine-tailed demon fox within him that made him feel it. This power, while bringing him pain, loneliness, and hatred, also endowed him with extraordinariness and strength unlike others. Upon the first sight of Su Qi, the power of the nine-tailed demon fox inside him boiled unexpectedly, as if he saw some very heavy shadow from Su Qi, like a mountain pressing on Su Qi's head. In that moment, Jeline was somewhat startled. It was much heavier than his, so he intuitively believed Su Qi also carried a past like his own. Su Qi paused, then looked over Jeline's head and saw, ? All right. You have a good eye for people. This wasn't any burdensome past. It was a big rocket sent by evil God. However, Su Qi narrowed his eyes. This guy indeed possessed an extraordinary power from the nine-tailed demon fox, to the extent that he could detect his spiritual eyes' suppressed leakage, that slight power. Of course, this also meant that the power of the spiritual eyes was on the brink of imbalance, ready to burst forth again at any moment. He wouldn't last long unless he completely cleared the trials. Rest assured, Jeline placed a hand on his shoulder. Now that we have become Heavenly Destiny people, there is a higher cause awaiting our struggle, and we will no longer be alone. We will definitely secure this victory. Su Qi paused. Is that so? He neither contradicted nor agreed, although each of the Heavenly Destiny people was resolute, filled with a sense of mission for the fight and believed in everlasting hope. But, let me speak frankly, from the Abyss conference he participated in, the things he heard, preparations made by the followers, and information exposed by the Dark Scripture, plus the blood-red rituals in the whole Dark Zone and so on, present world's chances of winning were less than 10%. And the Heavenly Destiny people, according to what Su Qi had seen so far, they had nothing but the guidance of the World Tree Withered Leaf. This ethereal guidance, carrying a destiny-like disorder, Su Qi didn't think it could reach a stage to contend with the Abyss. Simply put, they were not on the same level as the Abyss believers and venerables, who had complete strategies and backing forces. Of course, Su Qi naturally didn't think that the arrangements of the present world were limited to just this. Perhaps among the many Heavenly Destiny people, there were those incredibly extraordinary ones possessing true purpose and power and leading everything. While Su Qi and Jeline were chatting, Nan also came out of the monitoring room, exhausted. He couldn't help anymore. He sighed too, looking at the two, and slowly walked over. "Both of you, I have a request." "You say?" "I will definitely help." Jeline, who had first interacted with Nan, always had a friendly smile towards the people around him. Nan smiled gently. "Tell me about the outside world. For countless years, I've completely lost touch with the world of later generations, not knowing what it has become." Jeline patted his shoulder, comforting him. "Don't worry, Nan, you will definitely get out, and you will shine brilliantly once you do. By the time I get out, I'm afraid it will be too late," Nan quietly said. If he could get out, he could only do so alongside the demigods and extraordinary ones. God knows how much time would have passed by then. When he got out, these heavenly destiny people he was facing might have already advanced to be extraordinary or even top-tier high sequence, with his talent and potential all buried here, losing everything. However, who else could he blame? Initially, he had defied his father's prohibition and gone to that final battlefield, becoming not only a burden but also trapped in the mutual destruction of the ancient gate. For so many years, now finally awaiting the recovery of a new era. Yet there was no place for him. Even in the grand escape of the ancient gate, various demigods did not let him participate. Wherever he was, Nan felt useless. "Are you sure you want to go out?" Su Qi suddenly spoke gently. "The outside world is very dangerous, and staying here might actually provide you more protection. After all, you seem to have a prestigious identity. Going out might just turn you into a fleeting firework." "What of it?" Nan was serious, looking at his own hands. "I just want to utilize my own strength. Even if I die, I refuse to die here without a trace." "All right." Su Qi stood up. "I understand. If you want to go out, I'll give you a form to fill out later." Nan looked stunned as Su Qi stood up. "Wait, do you have a way to get out? And what form?" "The entrance application form of the Hustlers sect." Nan, as if possessed, followed Su Qi past him, his expression somewhat serious yet with a stiff smile on his face. "You were just kidding, right?" Su Qi did not answer, but simply walked toward the interior. Nan muttered to himself. "Besides, it all seems impossible. After all, even the General Commander Cat God was unable to take me away, because the old days are full of chaos. It can leave, but I, buried deep in the old days, would easily get lost in the endless darkness." Su Qi still did not speak, a light smile on his lips, because, although Nan mumbled about it being impossible, his body was honest and continued to follow Su Qi. He was desperate to leave this place. Su Qi calmly pushed open one door after another, moving freely with the Black Cat's authority card. It was at this moment that Nan noticed this fact. "The General Commander Cat God's authority card. Why do you have it? There needs to be someone to do what needs to be done here, right?" Su Qi said softly. "Otherwise, leaving it to that game-playing cat, this place would truly be hopeless." Su Qi had reached the management department. "What are you doing?" Nan was taken aback, watching Su Qi's actions. "I'm seeing if I can indirectly manage things." Su Qi had actually considered strategic deployment, adjusting aspects of the city. Unfortunately, under restrictive conditions, the various management departments could only macromanage and issue various policies. And in reality, these policies were all delayed, and thinking of achieving them in the short term was absurd, let alone within a day. Oh, not right. Counting from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., there were only 8 hours. However, Su Qi could understand, after all, this was a world that could only be operated over a long period. From ordinary methods, trying to change something within these 8 hours under the rules was almost impossible. So, he did not follow the usual path. Su Qi extended his hand, and the Super Dream Protocol chip appeared directly and was plugged in. "Xiao Meng, can you hack these systems?" "I can try." Nan watched this scene. He helplessly pressed his forehead. "You don't mean to alter the situation by hacking into the system and changing data?" Do you? Why not? Su Chi rubbed his chin and pondered. In a desperate moment when all means fail, isn't it time to activate Wind Spirit Moon Shadow? And Nan sighed, wondering what he was doing coming here, actually believing that the other could take him out. He gently said, "Firstly, all management systems here are designed by the Black and White Bear, and no one can arbitrarily alter them nor hack into them. These are rules from the old days that override everyone. Not even the divine can break them." Indeed, this point Su Chi admitted he was correct because Xiaomeng was analyzing, as if she were a complete entity, possessing the standard information capacity of both worlds, analyzing at a terrifying speed. Any system in an ordinary world could be hacked in the blink of an eye. But now, Xiaomeng seemed to encounter even more vast data. Secondly, and Nan continued, "What good will changing a few data points do? It can't affect the whole city, nor will it change the ensuing large-scale escape outcome." Su Chi paused. It seemed all the information in the Black Cat's computer was secret, and Nan was still unaware. This world was a game composed of countless data. Could it be that Su Chi suspected the ancient gate and other worlds or the entire existence were all made up of such data games? Of course, this was just a terrifying speculation, but since Su Chi learned about the hub system from the dark-haired youth, he could not help but think in this direction. There just weren't means to verify at the moment, and the true mysteries of the old days were still hidden. Zzz. At that time, a clear sound of electric current came from the system, along with a severe scorched smell. Su Chi extended his hand and grasped the burnt chip. "Master, this system not only has vast amounts of data but also a mysterious strength protecting it, like a barrier that cannot be penetrated, as if these data are stored in another dimension. Xiaomeng paused slightly, seemingly pondering. "However, I've seen this kind of strength before on top of the Heart of Divine Weapon." Su Chi's eyes narrowed slightly. Heart of Divine Weapon? Another dimension? This indeed more closely matched his speculation. The Heart of Divine Weapon being the core of another dimension, where its strength covered the entire divine machinery kingdom, and countless mechanical life were born and became divine within it. And looking at it this way, the old days might also possess some sort of core, its strength similarly covering every aspect within this dimension of the old days. If thinking further out of the box, Su Chi squinted, could there be a possibility? The core was actually the hub? 3 hubs existed within paradise. Only they were very weak. And as the dark-haired youth mentioned, not only the abyss and the hubs related to other ancient times, like main god space, reincarnation space, horror space, spirit realm space, etc. had appeared. Only these hubs likely perished or were devoured, with only the current 10 or so hubs completing their sublimation, creating individual dimensions. Although it's just speculation, I actually think it makes a lot of sense, looking back on it. Su Chi mused internally. I remember after the incident in the Anxious Land ended, I received a special reward. He still clearly remembered. Among the many rewards at the time, there was one named Sealed Land, and its description seemed to be related to the Nexus. Moreover, it was a Nexus that belonged exclusively to Su Chi. Except, it was hidden somewhere in the old days and required more clues and coordinates to find it. Alright, stop trying. They've now encountered new troubles, and I need to go over to provide information resources. This great escape, it's not so easily over. And Nan pressed his earpiece, listening to all sorts of information. Su Chi watched as Nan left soberly. In truth, nothing too serious was happening through the earpiece, but this guy was afraid of missing out on any action that could provide help. Well then, Su Chi didn't follow him. Xiaomeng, it's time for a formal and serious trial. Understood. Xiaomeng responded. Su Chi took out another chip. It was just a probe before, but in fact, he hadn't used his full strength yet. As Xiaomeng was analyzing the Heart of Divine Weapon, she was also merging with its power. She was evolving from an ordinary AI. Facing such a system now, ordinary methods naturally wouldn't succeed. This time, after Su Chi inserted the chip, he stretched out his hand. Suddenly, a blue core with crackling high-density energy appeared, condensed with vast energy like a miniature black hole inside. This was the Heart of Divine Weapon. Xiaomeng used the Heart of Divine Weapon to enter an overload state, and utilize the power of the Heart of Divine Weapon to see if you can open a gap. Yes. Xiaomeng flickered into a holographic child form. Her entire figure transformed dramatically, surrounded by torrents of blue information streams, swiftly swirling around like various star rings orbiting a planet. Xiaomeng, at this moment, was completely different from before. Her entire holographic figure turned icy blue, with strands of hair flying. Less naive, and more of the cold rationale of a highly intelligent life form. Is this Xiaomeng's new state after analyzing the Heart of Divine Weapon and advancing with its core power? Su Qi stroked his chin, now fully evolved to a higher form of intelligent life. Of course, she was currently in an overload state, belonging to a trump card that shouldn't burst forth lightly until the last moment. And new prompts appeared in Su Qi's field of vision. The Super Dream Protocol's unique highest intelligence Xiaomeng has assumed a higher life form, although it's only a temporary advance due to the power of the Heart of Divine Weapon, and it requires the price of dormancy. I believe that sooner or later she'll be able to grow to this extent. Su Qi spoke gently. Then Xiaomeng begin. At the same time, Xiaomeng gently waved, and the Heart of Divine Weapon shone a dazzling light. Torrents of blue information streams burst forth all at once, converging together with her gesture and assailing towards the chip. The power of the Heart of Divine Weapon was triggered, though just a trace, it carried the most core, bizarre strength. As it confronted the vast torrents of system defenses, the so-called old days firewall, the solid barriers began to slowly reveal themselves. Xiaomeng's voice floated over. Master, it's effective. The power of the Heart of Divine Weapon is equivalent and on the same level as the firewall of this system. Su Qi's eyes moved. Is that so? It seems like his previous guesses might have hit the mark. However, Master. But Xiaomeng paused. The power I can utilize is only a trace, and it's not enough to destroy this system's firewall. Though now in a new form and able to wield the power of the Heart of Divine Weapon, what she could use was just a sliver, like a grain of sand in the Milky Way, utterly insufficient to confront it. No need to destroy Xiaomeng classmate when facing any defense. If we cannot confront it, then we search for any possible weakness to infiltrate. No system can achieve all-around defense without a single leak. Su Qi gave a slight smile. Master, please give up the illusion. Xiaomeng, in this form, spoke with a voice that had a few more degrees of coldness and calm mockery. After enhancement with the Heart of Divine Weapon analysis, the system has no vulnerabilities, countless data streams are running perfectly, without a glimpse of an opportunity to intrude. Yet Su Qi's smile did not fade, only to softly say, Really? He reached out, pulling out a stack of documents from his pocket. What's this? If all the data in the world were to run perfectly under the rules. Su Qi spread out the documents, which were all the series of checks, contracts, and deeds signed personally by those rich people who had been saved from the bank. All bore the stamps that abided by the rules, without triggering any clauses outside the rules. He had initially felt it a pity to save these rich people's lives without leaving something behind, but now Su Qi found them extremely useful. It's a pity, such a perfect firewall, and its first loophole has appeared with me. Time ticked away second by second. A faint glimmer of light slowly appeared in the sky dome. The gloom of the survival game was quietly fading away, and the streets, ravaged by a multitude of weapons and grenades, were also being restored. The survival game was over, and all extraordinary beings and the strength of the abyss had returned to their respective places. At this moment, Black Cat was already back in the office, with a troubled expression. It's a problem. It's a problem, he sighed repeatedly in the office. Meanwhile, Su Qi sat on the sofa chair next to him, spinning gently. What's the matter? Had too much catnip? Black Cat cursed. It's because this time the opponents came prepared for the survival game. Although we managed to escape, it was very challenging, especially since after it ended, new survival game rules were refreshed. It opened the computer with a swipe of its paw downcast. The survival game ending today will involve full participation, significantly increasing the rate at which weapons, equipment, bullets, and so on are acquired, and it has prolonged the survival game's duration and introduced various changing rules. Su Chi paused. That sounds like a good thing. When I used to play games before, I looked forward to unlimited firepower the most. What good are you talking about? Do you really think this is a game? Black Cat widened its eyes. We're the ones being chased. Previously, we could deplete the opposition's firepower and then act. Now their firepower has ramped up, inexhaustible. This isn't a survival game anymore, but a formal confrontation. Su Chi swayed on the sofa chair, leisurely squinting with sunglasses on. That's serious, huh? Nonsense. Black Cat spoke gravely. The rewards and penalties this time will inevitably be completely different. It can be plainly stated that if we lose, we may completely overwhelm the balance that we have managed to maintain with great difficulty. Su Chi calmly held the black and white pocket watch, looking at its dense blackness as if ready to roll forth like a wave. You call this a hard-earned balance? Despite Black Cat's whole body being covered in black fur, you could still see its old face blushing. Ahem. That's not important. Anyway, the arrival of the heavenly destiny people of the present world and the meeting of the abyss believers with the venerable are all like the turning of the destiny chessboard, with the ancient gate triggering such a crucial node. Black Cat stretched its paw to press the keyboard below the computer, with a solemn expression. This time it did not open the game. Instead, it officially opened that hidden page and connected the communication of all demigods. Now all department heads and deputy heads. 5 minutes later, everyone come to the first floor hall for a meeting. It looked at Su Chi. It wanted to ask if Su Chi was going to attend. But Su Chi had already waved his hand. You go ahead. I still have important things to do. Black Cat rolled its eyes. What does it mean, implying that me hosting a meeting isn't important? This guy doesn't show any respect for the deity, and it immediately tore through the space, ready to go over. But before leaving, it saw Su Chi sitting in front of its computer, opening the game. This is your so-called important thing. Also, do you even know how to play? What if you make me lose points? How will I deal with that? I've only just made it to bronze. Kid, at this very moment, while Black Cat was seeking everyone for a meeting, on the other side, they had already gathered long ago, their dark shadows like a terrifying and eerie descent blowing in a cold wind somewhere within the dark market. Each abyss demon's eyes couldn't conceal the profound chill within. The opportunity has come, hasn't it? The grand escape tonight can certainly be called the final battle, and the time is now. One of them, who carried the aura of a god and was the most terrifying presence amongst them all with a dark mask, spoke softly. It's time to throw all of our previous deployments into the fray. Yes, Lord Bishop. They were natural at causing destruction, which everyone was quite skilled at. Moreover, the Lord Bishop before them was the great god of anxiety himself. When it came to controlling the hearts of men and wrecking all that was stable, they were top-notch professionals. Although they already had the upper hand on the surface, it wasn't just that. Many thinly veiled threats had yet to burst forth, and now was the perfect time. That Black Cat? It curled its lips in a cold smile. Do you think you can outplay me? They had many covert arrangements. Although each of them was an abyss demon, they clearly understood that the real key to influencing the city's operation was actually all the ordinary working people. They had been increasing all sorts of levers for a long time, planting various mines in real estate, banks, personal debt, and so on. Now all they had to do was wait. Once the combination was executed, they believed that the darkness on the pocket watch would persist through the night, and tonight's grand escape would gather a massive arsenal of weapons. Meanwhile, on Su Chi's side, he was not at headquarters but in a police car. Xiao Meng's hyperform was fully prepared, and everyone else was simply waiting for the perfect moment. So there was no need for Su Chi to wait on the sidelines. Now that Black Cat had finished the meeting and had begun the wide-scale operations, preparing for citywide roundups, heavy defenses, and all kinds of strategies to be fully executed. Many Heavenly Destiny people had also received their tasks, which was to deal with a great increase in incidents at the emergency centers. Whether it was robbery, theft, destruction, or other violent incidents, every one of the Heavenly Destiny people set out immediately, doing their best to add to the world's points. However, Su Chi wasn't moving with that group of Heavenly Destiny people. He was on his way to deal with someone wearing odd clothes who was eating and drinking without paying in Snack Street. In principle, such minor incidents were nearly ignored by the people of the present world nowadays, and more often than not, they were directly handed over to ordinary police officers. But the reason Su Chi came was that the person eating without paying and wearing odd clothes was none other than himself. The police car soon stopped outside Snack Street. As the driving officer was about to get out, Su Chi had already opened the door. "You stay in the car. I'll handle it." Walking in, Su Chi found the place crowded and buzzing, as the people were pointing and talking about the young man sitting at a roast deli. But most importantly, this young man looked exactly like Su Chi, brazenly enjoying a free meal. Seeing this, Su Chi was not at all surprised. Instead, he smiled. "Excuse me, please." The surrounding crowd unconsciously made way, and their gazes followed this young man walking forward, suddenly stunned. Why does this guy have the same face as the guy inside? As more people noticed this, they couldn't help but look. Twins. Probably. Hearing these voices, Su Chi strode through the crowd into the deli. Then he approached the person who had the same face as himself. Tisk. Su Chi sat down, looking at the full table of dishes. This method is pretty good, disguising as someone else, running up tabs, and putting every charge on someone else. The person before him spoke indifferently and with a hint of resentment. "Can you blame me? I've wandered in this city for a whole day and night, originally thinking that as the Venerable, you should be in the abyss. But then I realized that wasn't the case." He calmly continued, "You're not only in contact with the Heavenly Destiny people, but even one of them. I'm getting more and more curious about you, Su Buxian." The person before him was Bei Xinxing. Known for his many disguises, taking on the appearance of Su Chi was unsurprising. "What exactly is your identity?" "Humph." Su Chi replied calmly. "That's a long story, but let's not talk about it here. You should know the rules of this city. No using strength in front of people, right? I know?" Bei Xinxing spoke flatly. "Do you think I'm just wandering around aimlessly?" He was not only aware of the city's rules but also the conflict between the abyss and the present world, including the Grand Escape. After all, he had quietly witnessed everything that night. "Wait. Before you leave, you need to settle the bill." Su Chi suddenly paused. "Bei Xinxing?" Of course, in the end, it was Su Chi who paid. "You owe me another favor." Su Chi and he were already walking along another path, with no one around. Su Chi had notified that police officer that the incident was over and told him to head back first. Bei Xinxing, with his forehead full of black lines, retorted, "What do you mean again? I haven't even brought up the matter of your disappearing all over the world. Be careful. I might disguise myself as you and cause trouble everywhere next time. My disguises are extremely hard to see through." "Is that so?" Su Chi, intrigued, looked at him and warned playfully, "Just a friendly reminder, don't try such things lightly. It's well-meant advice because if trouble finds you, don't blame me for not warning you in advance. Listening to your tone, it seems you've made quite a few enemies." "There are a few people," Su Chi extended 2 fingers and pinched them together, "who have a bit of hostility towards me." "A few people and you're scared?" Bei Xinxing didn't take it to heart. He reverted to his own appearance. He didn't often disguise himself as others. He preferred to demonstrate his strength in his true form. "Now, back to serious matters. Are you really a Venerable? Or one of the Heavenly Destiny people?" "That's not a serious matter, but of course I can answer you," Su Chi replied gently. Bei Xinxing narrowed his eyes. He had realized from the beginning that Su Chi was no ordinary person, not just because of his venerable status, but also for surpassing his own expectations at the previous school by conquering the Gate World. And now, after entering here, this guy was actually walking with the current world camp. His gaze was sharp, and he listened intently. I am. Su Qi paused. I am a hustler. Bei Xinxing was taken aback. What? A hustler? Su Qi elaborated. Centered around entertainment. Unique amongst the life of 10,000 realms. Unfazed by chaos or cruelty. Always moving leisurely. Bei Xinxing. Is that just another name for a lunatic? Good comeback. Su Qi held up a finger. You have the potential to become a hustler and join the hustlers' sect, but of course you have to go through an evaluation. Bei Xinxing was somewhat silent and somewhat confused. The hustlers' sect? How come I've never heard of it? A powerful organization beyond what you can imagine. I am one of its members, capable of walking on the edge of the abyss and standing at the summit of the present world. Su Qi said softly. Bei Xinxing didn't respond. His brows were deeply furrowed. He racked his brain trying to recall whether he had any memory of such an organization called the Hustlers, but found nothing in his ancient memories. However, if you want to join, I can give you a backdoor entry. Su Qi snapped his fingers softly. Of course, then you'll owe me another favor. Bei Xinxing, aren't you a bit too shameless? Considering his own status, joining any organization would bring substantial benefits, and numerous organizations would vie for him. And here with you I have to apply first? Not only that, but according to this guy, I even have to use a back entrance? Anyway, you're now in the camp of those current world people, right? Bei Xinxing said calmly. That's not a good choice. How so? I haven't just been wandering around for the past day and night. Plus, Bei Xinxing extended his hand as various items' ethereal images began to appear quietly, showing various parts of the city, all swapped by his ability, hidden from ordinary people. Being able to freely use abilities without ordinary people noticing suits me perfectly, and I've come to thoroughly understand through my own abilities. Bei Xinxing said softly, this city has already fallen under the control of the abyss. There's no possibility for you to turn the tables. And Bei Xinxing drew out a pocket watch. You must have one of these too, right? I swiped it quietly when I left the Abyss stronghold, and this black is much denser than before. I can tell. Su Qi also took out his pocket watch, and it seems they still have various trump cards they haven't used. I must warn you, Bei Xinxing said calmly. Black and white aren't about who has more or less, but about limitless values. Their massacre tonight will gain an unimaginable advantage. And look, Bei Xinxing gazed into the distance. Their tactics are probably about to start. Beep, beep, beep. A multitude of vehicles were honking their horns because a crossroad up ahead was completely clogged, the traffic lights having started blinking randomly at some point. Power outages were beginning in many streets, with various important buildings throughout the city plunging into darkness. And various regions were descending into chaos because several of the largest chemical plants had leaks, with vast amounts of toxic gases flooding in. But this was only part of it. Issues involving the economy, resources, security, and more were all bursting forth. Su Qi's earpiece was also ringing. It was Black Cat. They've started. Su Qi looked at the data Xiaomeng sent over, all the indices crazily dropping, with the Abyss Index sharply rising, overwhelmingly surpassing the world index maintained by the current world. Bei Xinxing also picked up a pocket watch. It's Friday today, isn't it? For the people of this city, it's truly a day of darkness. And for you, darkness is about to descend. Time passed by the minute. The opponent's various maneuvers were infiltrating from all directions, seeping into this riddled city. With every ticking second, vast amounts of Abyss Index rose, and as time went on, it became even more absurd. The opponent had prepared for too long, had laid the groundwork for too long. The pocket watch was now covered in black, and after reaching a certain extent, it was no longer clear what level it had achieved. However, Su Qi could still see the index. The Abyss Index was nearly 5 million and counting. With 3 to 4 hours left until darkness fell, it was projected to reach 10 million. This was a terrifying number, especially since Black Cat was leading everyone to do everything possible to mend all the destruction on the Abyss's side. But now, it was only around 300,000. Xiaomeng, how's the progress? The infiltration system is currently at 74%. Came the update from Xiao Meng. Even if she had found a loophole, it still required time to decode and enter. As time slowly crept by, the sky dome began to dim gradually. Aren't you worried at all? Bei Xinxing looked at Su Qi as the two strolled down the street. The city was in chaos. Scores of people saw their funds plunge in an instant. Countless investors faced liquidation. Standees thronged roofs with nothing but losses to show. Banks were witnessing all cash being frantically withdrawn, and whales filled the trading floors. With the manpower that Black Cat had, it was entirely overwhelmed. What good does worrying do? Su Qi said. It's a game of operations. All the dark moves are arranged over countless years. Now that it's erupting, we just have to accept it. Is that so? Bei Xinxing paused. You seem to be taking it quite easy. Perhaps you're right. It's better to just give up everything at hand now and start preparing for the big escape. It's not that bad. Su Qi looked at the evening sky. Now is almost the right time. Su Qi softly ordered, Gan Wansue, lead everyone to take action. Creating a loophole was simple, having the Shadow Army, which shouldn't exist, engage in transactions. The transactions would exist, but the people involved would disappear. The goods would be taken back by the Shadow Army to the Spirit House, creating a brief chaos within the ancient gate. And this bit was enough for Xiao Meng to exploit the loophole, completing her cheat. Of course, it seemed easy, but the timing had to be right, considering the system was constantly updating, evolving every moment, repairing itself amidst the flood of information. So one couldn't act too soon, otherwise the hacked data would be detected in an instant, restoring everything to its original state. And it wouldn't do to act too late. Changing the game once the free-for-all had begun would be meaningless. One had to seize that moment of timing. And now, the city's twilight glowed like a burning fire, yet grew dimmer, as if consumed by the flames. A gray night was quietly approaching, yet unlike before, everything was still salvageable. The hands on the pocket watch ticked away, but they were drowned out in the boundless darkness. Just before the hands on the watch moved to a particular moment, Su Qi softly began to speak. Xiao Meng. Xiao Meng did not respond. In the next instant, the city's clock bells thundered, and all the chaos vanished in a moment. The black and white pocket watch suddenly shattered. Only boundless darkness plummeted, accompanied by a voice from a cold, mechanized black and white bear. Night has fallen. Judging is underway. Above the vast sky dome, darkness outlined the shape of a clock, with a full moon hanging within it. The massive silhouette of the mechanical black and white bear stood therein. It seemed as if the city was merely a miniature sand table placed on its desktop, and the luminous full moon in the sky dome, merely a light bulb. Judgment ended, now announcing the rules of the Battle Royale. Everyone will be transported randomly to various places in the city. Based on personal progress during the day, each person will receive corresponding, specific equipment and weapons, which will be updated and upgraded hourly. Current equipment: beginner protective gear, beginner weapons, beginner vehicle. Please note, all stage equipment will vary in form and strength, depending on the earnings index during operation and the performance in the events. Random city events will occur periodically. These are the newly announced rules of the Battle Royale. Everyone's hands now bore a watch, displaying individual information including current coordinates in the city and more. Simultaneously, random transport had also begun. Everyone heard the sound of gears turning around them, corresponding to their vision getting covered by many gears. Speaking of which, Bei Xinxing glanced at his watch. It seems this time it's not about two factions' rules, but individual combat. Although it doesn't make much difference to the present world and the abyss, it's a good thing for me. I really don't want to get involved in the troubles of these two sides. As soon as he finished speaking, both Bei Xinxing and Su Qi were enveloped by the gears that swirled around them. The constant whirring of gears resounded. Su Qi stood in the midst, stroking his chin. Opting out is not an option. As a member of the Hustlers, How can we stand idle in everything? The gears encased and turned, seemingly moving Su Qi. In just 10 seconds, the surrounding gears began to separate and dig into the ground, and Su Qi also arrived at a coffee shop that had shut its doors. Though this method seemed odd, if one thought about it, it resembled personal space. Now commencing the distribution of initial equipment. Elsewhere, whether it was the heavenly destiny people, venerables, or various strong beings of the present world and abyss, they were all scattered around the massive city. Their eyes were all fixed on their watches. Initial equipment, huh? Several boxes formed from gears appeared before many abyss demons and venerables. Upon opening the box, the first was an advanced bulletproof vest, followed by a high-quality, powerful pistol and a thermal imaging scope lying beside it. This was the initial equipment. Although updates and upgrades would follow, for now, the equipment seemed rather fine. Meanwhile, an abyss demon with a mask bore a cold intent to kill. If we have these, I wonder what the present world has. On the side of the present world, Black Cat looked at the 3 items in the item slot: a safety helmet, an old-fashioned pistol, and energy drink. Black and White Bear, you bastard! Black Cat cursed loudly. How could one play this? However, there was no choice. It had indeed been completely suppressed during the day, yet hope wasn't lost. It was about buying time and waiting for the events within. Previously, it seemed events could change the situation. Anyway, Black Cat licked her paw and put on the equipment. First, let's meet up with the others. Wearing the safety helmet and carrying the old-fashioned pistol, the cat leaped out onto the streets. Countdown to the first city event. 30 minutes. Please prepare as much as possible. Su Qi looked at the information on his watch. This battle royale wasn't as simple and rough as before, but began by randomly announcing events. City events, wonder what will happen. And he regained his focus. And, my 3 items, aren't they a bit different from the others? The box that appeared before Su Qi. The first item was a nanotech protective suit. Simply put, it was an advanced protective suit used for interstellar travel, capable of resisting high and low temperatures, top-level protection against high-energy radiation, various particle energies. As for bullets, what were those even? The second was a hand-sized pistol with blue particles. Little B pistol, but it bore the same label as the protective suit, seemingly from the same product line. Su Qi had no intention of trying it out since randomly shooting in a quiet city wasn't a good habit. The third item was Annihilation B Swarm. Wait a moment, I remember. Su Qi stroked his chin. The weapon equipment everyone had last night didn't look like this. Even if there was a difference in strength, they were all within ordinary firearms. And now, it was all high-tech here. Xiao Meng. Su Qi was trying to wake Xiao Meng to ask what she changed at the last moment. However, Xiao Meng did not respond. Ever since the battle royale was declared, a lot of changes had occurred, and it seemed Xiao Meng had fallen into a deep sleep. It wasn't clear if it was due to exploiting a loophole or because the Heart of Divine Weapon was overloaded. Anyway, it would take some time for Xiao Meng to wake up, and he could only wait for her to come out of hibernation to ask what had happened. So now, Su Qi raised his hand, and the nanotech protective suit melded into his body. The small pistol and the Annihilation B Swarm were also stored away. He walked calmly to the coffee shop's machine. Let's have a coffee before going out. Although the next city event was set to start in 30 minutes, there was no need to panic. At the moment, everyone was focused on finding a way to gather first. However, gathering was not so simple. All the people now were just ordinary folks, and without the logistical support of information provided, everyone was in the dark. Of course, it wasn't ruled out that some might acquire something like a map or probing equipment. But 30 minutes wasn't enough to do much. Acting prematurely could cause unnecessary commotion. After all, this was a big city with a population of nearly 10 million. Moving to and fro wasn't easy to meet someone, even considering the current combined numbers of nearly 1,000 from both the present world and the abyss. It would be extremely difficult to convene. Moreover, everyone was now just ordinary people, lacking suitable modes of transportation, which made it even harder to move around the city. However, This was only temporary. Equipment would be upgraded each round and become more advanced, and the subsequent events would naturally unfold gradually. So, there was no rush for the countdown to the first round of the event. Su Qi was in the coffee shop, manually grinding coffee beans, passing the half hour. The coffee, gently steaming. Su Qi wasn't finished yet. He went to the storage locker to see if there was anything else to use for making some latte art. And while Su Qi was busily going about his business, a pair of icy eyes stood on the third floor of the building opposite, staring at this coffee shop. It was a demon, currently in human form, but the terrifying aura it carried could not be ignored, and it had its gaze fixed on the busy young man in the coffee shop since the beginning. A strange fellow. At this moment, others were using all their efforts to hide and prepare for what was to come, making contact and gathering. But this person was leisurely making coffee, unhurried, strolling as if in a garden. The demon wore a thick tactical bulletproof vest, a helmet on its head, and the gun in its hand had a black shimmer, a small rapid-fire pistol. However, what was most important was the high-explosive bomb in its hand. "Do you not have a single piece of protective gear?" The demon looked at Su Qi with cold eyes filled with a hint of murderous intent. Is that his weapon? It also naturally noticed the small, pitiful gun at Su Qi's waist, barely managing not to scoff. Is that even a gun? Its gun's dark muzzle was already ready, pointed at Su Qi, who had just sat down, but then it slowly withdrew. First, it seemed to sense someone coming. Second, although the pistol was rapid-fire, its power was also not strong. The two buildings were quite a distance apart, and there was also the interference of glass. Of course, it wasn't worried about missing. Under the rules, they were all just ordinary people in terms of strength. But in reality, while their bodies could be restrained, their souls couldn't. Each of them had extremely keen reflexes and probing abilities, amongst others. They could even dodge bullets. Therefore, killing anyone was not so simple. It didn't want to startle the prey, because at this moment, it discovered that the approaching person was taking very cautious steps towards the coffee shop. Is it a heavenly destiny person? It slowly disappeared from sight, a new prey now in sight. Well then, I'll let you live a little longer before I sweep you all up. Now was not the best time to strike. It was not in a hurry, lying in wait from afar. And at this moment, Jeline, using a device akin to a radar, followed the green light on its screen, moving carefully forward. Jeline, surrounded by darkness and silence, approached the coffee shop with a solemn expression. He quickly spotted a familiar figure through the transparent window glass. Jeline paused slightly. The faint aroma of coffee wafted to his nose. You! Jeline pushed the door open and saw Su Qi sitting with his legs crossed. Why are you drinking coffee? Because this coffee is good. Oh! Jeline looked around at the equipment piled up. It seemed that Su Buxian had been busy with these all day. He sighed with slight exasperation. That's not what I asked. I'm wondering why you're so relaxed, Brother Su. How have I been leisurely? Su Qi paused. While you were taking your stroll over here, I've been making coffee the whole time. Jeline? He pressed his forehead. Anyway, Brother Su, let's first figure out a way to gather with the others, Jeline said. I have a premonition that if we stay in one place, we'll be discovered by others very soon. Based on the current setup, he had guessed that everyone had received different things. Some were the main firepower, some specialized in probing, and others various supports. So, being alone was too dangerous, and it was essential to meet up with others as soon as possible. Moreover, his intuition told him that a vague sense of danger seemed to be looming all around. Can't be denied. His feeling was correct. Su Qi's eyes stealthily glanced into the distance. Within a building across two thoroughfares, a question mark was flickering. Someone had been watching them for a while. They hadn't made a move only because he was making coffee, sitting by the window with no guard up, was to sell a flaw and lure the other party into making a move. Unfortunately, that person was very steady, and with Jeline's sudden approach, it was obvious that the other party no longer had the desire to attack. However, They were still lurking in the shadows, like a venomous snake ready to deliver a fatal strike at any moment. At this moment, Jeline felt anxious and wanted to leave. But Su Qi calmly said, "Don't rush." Su Qi brewed hot water. The scalding water poured into the cup. A faint aroma of coffee wafted out. "First have a cup of coffee, and then we'll see what happens when the countdown ends." Responding to every change with constancy is true wisdom. Jeline silently took the coffee cup, blew on the steam a few times, wanted to drink but paused. "Why do I feel like you just can't bear to leave and want to enjoy a bit more leisure time?" "How is that possible?" Su Qi said righteously. "Everyone is in a life or death crisis, and everyone is desperately doing whatever they can. How can I let down my guard?" The words were such. But seeing Su Qi cross his legs, squinting his eyes and enjoying his coffee, Jeline found the statement unconvincing. However, he thought Su Qi made sense. It was better to wait for the countdown to end rather than wander around aimlessly. And now, he checked the time. There were 5 minutes left until the countdown ended. There wasn't much else they could do in those 5 minutes, so they remained still. Divine Gold. The demon in the distance watched the newly joined Heavenly Destiny people, who at first appeared very nervous and solemn, but now, after being spoken to by that guy, was also enjoying the coffee. A few sips and even a thumbs up with squinted eyes. The problem wasn't with himself or the Heavenly Destiny people, it was with that guy. And at this very moment, time passed by the second. In the half hour, a lot of people might have already gathered or taken action. But that was just a minority. Now, most people's attention was focused on the countdown because it was less than 30 seconds away. Nobody knew what the first event would be. However, it was bound to break the current silence and perhaps serve as the key moment to fire the first shot. The final 5 seconds. Everyone was watching, and after 5 seconds, the black and white bear's icon displayed on the wristwatch, followed slowly by a large spinning wheel with various unclear symbols crammed onto it. City Random Event. Triggered. Selecting event randomly. Ding. The pointer slowly stopped at one of the areas, which had an image of indistinct shambling undead. Current event. Zombie Siege City. Attention all participants. You have only 3 minutes to find a safe haven. A large number of zombies will be released after 3 minutes. Zombies. Jeline looked at the description above, and his expression grew solemn as he exchanged glances with Su Qi. "Brother Su, it's zombies. I'm not blind." Su Qi sipped his coffee. "So, that's what the city incident is about. It seems our equipment isn't meant for fighting each other at the moment, but rather it's an important starter gift package to keep us alive." Jeline nodded gravely. Indeed, they had placed too much emphasis on past experience. Based on previous free-for-alls, all equipment and weapons were designed for combat against each other, but not this time. "So what should we do?" "Let's go. This building. Let's head to a higher floor." Su Qi immediately moved. Higher floors were not only good places to avoid zombie sieges, but also positions from which to probe nearby information. Jeline followed him. Right now, they were ordinary people. Regardless of what trump cards they carried, Grandpa was useless. The only useful things were their soul-brought high agility, reaction speed, and various useful equipment and weapons they had acquired. Jeline's 9-tailed demon fox had been uncontactable since the beginning of the massacre. Blocked. Su Qi was in the same situation. Luo Xinfu hadn't made a sound in a long time. However, Xiao Meng's situation was different. Su Qi could feel. There were still many things on his person he could use, like the Shadow Army, the curse on his arm, the active evil god power within his spiritual eyes, all still thriving. So dark. While going upstairs, the darkness was like stagnant water, so dense that even they couldn't see their surroundings clearly. Snap! Su Qi snapped his fingers, and a starfire lit up the dark hallway. Yes, starfire was usable. And one more thing. That was the blue mark on Su Qi's palm, which also seemed to be usable. All along, Su Qi had not discovered how to activate it. However, from the question mark displayed above, he saw some useful information. Simply put, it was still in hibernation and would need to consume a significant amount of energy to be used. Brother Su. Jeline watched Su Chi move forward with a ball of starfire in his hand, hesitating to speak. Your equipment is kind of miserable. That cricket handgun, is it loaded with staples? Your armor is also absent. The Firefly illumination tool is quite bright, but its usefulness is extremely limited. Su Chi. Rude. These things are of great value. I hope so. Jeline rubbed his forehead. Their current world camp shouldn't be this bleak. It only suggested that Brother Su might have been slacking off during the day. After all, he had participated in many large-scale destructive actions during the day. His equipment might not be comparable to Abyss, but it still had the strength to fight. Click! Su Chi pushed open the door to the rooftop, which bore signs of having been locked for many years, but it had been broken down. It seems gathering a lot of people on the rooftop during the day has its benefits. They opened the lock for us in advance, Su Chi said with a smile. It would have been even better if they had left some equipment while hopping around up here. Jeline remained silent, feeling a bit like hell, buddy. After opening the rooftop door, they entered this vacant area. This was a high-rise building over 30 stories tall, offering a wide view, immediately revealing many surrounding streets. Jeline squinted his eyes, leaning on the edge of the rooftop, looking around, and also at the device in his hand. His equipment was actually not too bad. He had a pistol on his waist, the probing device, and a vial of injection potion that could let him burst forth with power for a short period. Stop looking. Su Chi paused. When you gaze into the abyss gazes also into you. Everyone is hiding themselves, quietly waiting for deployment. He checked the time, which was already tight. During their ascent, the time for the zombie drop was almost upon them. Here it comes. Jeline suddenly looked around. The entire city was filled with a rumbling sound. A large number of gears appeared far above in the sky dome. As they turned, could be seen, like floodgates opening, that numerous channels were being opened. The next moment, numerous containers with parachutes were dropped from the sky dome, and each container was covered with masses of flesh, continuously showering blood rain downward. Jeline's eyes narrowed gravely at the sight. The sheer number, just the ones currently visible, were thousands of containers, each filled with a dense chorus of howls. What was just a quiet, deserted city a moment ago had suddenly turned into a city of apocalyptic zombies. And the speed of the container's descent increased as the parachute holes were torn larger and larger. Boom! A series of muffled impacts resounded. Numerous containers fell like meteors one after another onto the ground, rolling among buildings. The container doors were also smashed open. Masses of zombies wildly ran out, with terrifying faces and blood-soaked, mangled bodies fueled by a bloodthirsty madness. The streets were already filled. Coming up high was indeed the right choice, Jeline exhaled. Su Chi paused. Not necessarily. He looked up. A black shadow was falling overhead, and the landing spot was precisely their location on the rooftop. It seems our luck isn't very good. With a boom, the massive container plunged directly onto the rooftop of this high-rise building. Although it was somewhat offset, the container didn't completely smash through the floor, but it still deformed the doors of the container, from which a pungent stench of decay and a swarm of carrion insects flew out. They heard the roar close by. Jeline had already grabbed his handgun. This just perfectly blocks the door. Brother Su, looks like we have to deal with these. He had already entered combat mode. After all, even though they were in the state of ordinary humans, each of them was a top-tier combat genius. Even with just firearms, they could carve a bloody path through dangerous territory. Bang! The container door was directly knocked open. More than 50 zombies were squeezed out, one after another, bursting out of the container, howling as they surged forward. These zombies are not the slow-moving elderly type. They're quite fast, observed Su Chi as he watched the scene. Jeline didn't hesitate and opened fire. His bullets hit the zombies' hearts with precision, which made Su Chi startle. What are you doing? Jeline was puzzled. Of course, I'm killing them. These 50-plus monsters are extremely fast. They seem quite strong, and they have an obvious insane desire for us, as if they want to devour our flesh raw. It seems you've never seen zombies before, Su Chi said, stroking his chin. See if hitting their hearts does any good? Jalene's eyes sharpened. The zombies' hit in the heart just trembled a bit, then continued their stride, completely unaffected. How could this be? Let me correct you, young man. Su Chi slowly raised his cricket pistol. To hit zombies, you should aim for the head. He calmly raised his pistol, aiming at the zombies' heads. Headshot. That's art. Next, Su Chi pulled the trigger. And the next moment, Su Chi felt something was wrong, because his cricket pistol suddenly emitted a sharp, high-pitched whine as blue particles violently gathered. An astonishing recoil burst forth in the blink of an eye, under Jalene's sharply contracting pupils. Boom! Blue energy erupted in front of them with astonishing force. More than 50 zombies, along with that container, were blasted into pieces in the blink of an eye. The rooftop, which had been extremely dangerous mere moments ago, was now only filled with the smell of blood and dissolving flesh and limbs. Su Chi fell silent, and so did Jalene. So this damn gun actually had such power. He had thought about trying it in the coffee shop earlier. Thankfully, he had resisted. In the silence, Jalene glanced at his handgun, then at Su Chi's, and turned his head stiffly. This is what you call shooting the head. Su Chi slowly retracted the cricket, his shoulder a bit sore from the recoil, but he coolly said, "You tell me if the heads are still there." He gently blew on the muzzle of the cricket pistol. My gun is just this accurate, shot after shot headshots. Jalene? He was too drained to retort. However, Jalene looked at the destruction on the rooftop with a shocked expression. Is this the weapon you got? Such incredible power. But there are limits, Su Chi said softly. It can only be activated once a minute. That's super strong already, isn't it? Jalene's eyes widened. Although there were many restrictions in this great escape, they weren't stingy with bullets at all. Such powerful force was already incredibly outrageous. But, Jalene exhaled, seeing that your other equipment is crap, I've come to accept it. Now it was Su Chi's turn to be puzzled. Do you have a problem with my Starfire that didn't cost a thing? Looks like we need to find a new place, said Su Chi lightly. That last shot had not been small in power, and it would surely draw attention from the vicinity. Plus, new information appeared on the wristwatch. Event updated. Attention, there is a chance of receiving rewards for killing zombies. Attention, among the numerous containers in the city, only one contains the key to ending this event. Random airdrops will appear along the way, possibly containing better equipment, blood serum, enhancing potions, etc. Note that all enhancement effects last until the end of the battle royale, although danger could also be present. Lastly, the infection circle will refresh and gradually shrink until it locks onto that key container. Anyone outside the infection circle will begin to lose life, decompose, and will be considered dead upon losing consciousness. It seems our goal is clear. We just have to find that container, Jalene said with furrowed brows. But in this vast city, the odds of finding that one are too small. We can only rely on the infection circle to narrow the search area. Let's take it one step at a time, Su Chi said. Not in a hurry, but rather heading towards the nearby blasted container. He reached out and picked up a bloodstained box. Looks like this is the reward for killing zombies. Su Chi opened it to find a can of drink inside. Jalene came over. It looks like just an ordinary drink.
No.
Su Chi shook his head, looking at the information displayed on his wristwatch. This is an energy drink. It can slightly increase speed and boost physical strength and recovery, as well as provide resistance to infection, lasting 5 minutes. Jalene glanced at his wristwatch. So it can display information about various items. How should I put this? Su Chi looked away. The sense of déjà vu is getting stronger. If this black and white bear hadn't been baptized through the hub system, Su Chi would wash its hair upside down. Everything about this ancient gate is essentially a task system. At this moment, the infection circle had refreshed, but it covered the entire city, with another refresh in 10 minutes. Toxic gases like tidal waves started appearing around the outskirts of the city. It's equivalent to no refresh. It doesn't change the situation, Jeline said with knitted brows. In fact, it does. Su Qi said softly. Since the infection circle has to refresh around the city, everyone will first choose to arrive at strategic locations in advance. So, most people will try to move as close to the center of the infected area as possible. That way, they have ample time to act regardless. Of course, this doesn't concern us. Su Qi spread his hands. We're on the edge of the city and without any means of transportation. Plus, with the presence of zombies, we can't do much in 10 minutes. Jeline listened, stunned. Following Su Qi for a while, he suddenly realized, if there's nothing to be done, what's the point of all this analysis? Wait, aren't we supposed to go out? What are you looking for? Of course, it's... Su Qi kicked open the door to the fire storage forcefully, glanced around, and found a fire axe. This. Su Qi handed one over. Keep it. Zombies, those creatures, are very sensitive to sound. That gunshot of mine has already attracted a lot of zombies nearby. My gun has substantial power, but it needs to cool down. Your gun, on the other hand, can be used. It's just that fallback plans can go out the window once we're surrounded, or else we'll just attract more zombies. Jeline watched how skilled and proficient Su Qi was, as if this was second nature to him, and he couldn't help but be somewhat stunned. Brother Su, if I may ask, have you been through this before? Pretty much. The third instance Su Qi experienced was the Night Demon Ruin City, dominated by zombies. However, in Jeline's eyes it seemed grave. Brother Su had been through such a tragic world. Let's go. After preparing to leave, the zombies attracted by the earlier noise had dispersed from downstairs. A large number of zombies had been released, but after counting, there were only about 1 million, nowhere near enough to saturate the city. So as long as they didn't attract zombies, there were ways to move. Su Qi squinted at the outside. The demon that had been eyeing them was still there, but had already begun to move silently. Interesting. They were still being watched. Although the current event featured zombies as the main threat, none of the participants took these insignificant creatures seriously. What stature did they have? And what was this pile of rotten flesh? They were leftovers from their play. So the real danger didn't lie with the zombies. Su Qi and Jeline were moving quickly. To be honest, in such a vast city, relying on their legs alone wasn't enough in a short time. 10 minutes. They could only have made it from the residential area to a nearby subway station within 1 kilometer, let alone now with so many zombies around. They had only just passed the 2nd street, and soon, the 10 minutes had passed. The next moment, both their watches emitted a slight vibration. Please note, the current infection circle has refreshed. In their view, an entire overhead map of the city appeared, showing the infection circle that had originally covered the city suddenly shrinking. Nearly 1/3 of the area had been cut off. It seems our luck isn't very good, Su Qi said lightly, clicking his tongue. This area is cut off. We must act immediately. Jeline's expression darkened as he looked towards the distant outskirts of the city, seemingly seeing the infectious fog stealthily blowing in from outside the city. Roar! Whether it was because of the refresh of the infection circle at this very moment, some zombies had already discovered the two of them. Get lost! Jeline didn't use a gun. Instead, he wielded a fire axe and charged forward, splitting the head of an approaching zombie. The next refresh of the infection circle will be in 20 minutes. The refresh time has increased. Su Qi also kicked away a zombie that suddenly pounced from the shadows, his body clad in nano-level protective clothing which actually allowed him to move freely among the zombie crowd without fear of scratches or bites. At this moment, the noise made by the two had attracted attention, and the surrounding zombies all started moving towards them. Let's run. No longer hiding and ducking, the two started sprinting. The infection circle was shrinking faster than anticipated. They needed to reach the safe zone before then. They weren't slow, carrying their fire axes and quickly pushing forward. Any zombies that came at them from the front could easily be decapitated in an instant. No matter how weak, they were fighters who had survived various life and death battles and were chosen from thousands for their battle instincts, which had reached a level of intuitive proficiency. Even limited to the strength of ordinary people, they were far stronger than imagined. Just like that black-haired youth in the dueling ground earlier, he hadn't even used any spiritual energy, or burst any strength, relying only on a small handgun to take down several 7th rank. Crack! The fire axe splattered copious amounts of black blood around. More zombies were attacking. Although these zombies were brainless weaklings in their eyes, they also posed various fatal threats. Moreover, there were more zombies than they had expected. We are 3 kilometers from the safe zone, just over 10 minutes left, if we keep getting held up here. Jeline didn't continue, turning his head to look behind, where the already segmented outer circle of the city's infection could be seen. The dark green poisonous fog was rolling in from a distance like smog. I'm going to use my gun, Brother Su, you should. No, you go ahead, Su Chi interrupted. I'm afraid of scaring someone away. Jeline frowned slightly, then his expression turned solemn. You mean? Just act normally. I think it can't hold back anymore. Understanding, Jeline knew from his detecting equipment there wasn't supposed to be anyone nearby. But trusting Brother Su's certainty, he had to cooperate. He had already drawn his gun. Bang! As they ran, bullets shot out, but after each shot he needed to reload. At this moment, up in a high building, a demon with cold eyes was watching them, not needing to move on the ground. Because besides that weapon, it also had an enhancing potion and a 3-dimensional movement device. The enhancing potion had given it plenty of strength, and although the 3-dimensional movement device was simple, it allowed it to move between buildings. Now it watched the 2 men breaking through from the high building. Its eyes flickered slightly. To be honest, it had planned to wait for more people to gather before making a move, because with the enemy in the light and itself in the dark, coupled with equipment advantage, it had planned to ambush. However, that had been its plan, but now was an excellent opportunity. The enemy was surrounded by zombies, their attention completely diverted. All their attacks were focused on breaking through. Furthermore, if it continued to wait here, the trouble from the infection circle reaching it would be inevitable. So, this is it. Several high-explosive hand grenades appeared in its hand, the gun also gripped in the other, the mobility device propelling it directly towards the path they were taking. A fierce figure with intense killing intent, approaching them rapidly, and below, here it comes, Su Chi softly said. Jeline's form paused slightly but didn't stop moving. He naturally couldn't let the enemy realize they had noticed it. The enemy wanted a surprise attack, and he wanted to counter and capture it. As for Su Chi, he didn't care about this point at all. He was indifferent about killing the enemy. Rather than act now, he preferred to drag out the time. After all, he had already cheated. His 3 pieces of equipment were high-tech, but within the rules they were just initial gear. So, he just needed to wait for time, to wait for new and stronger equipment, tools, and other items to be updated. And also, Su Chi's eyes glanced at the surrounding zombies. Considering he could previously pick up various tools from the zombies, it seemed that everyone should be able to progress and become stronger, and the power they would unleash later might become even mightier. At the same time, these fragile zombies had become completely non-threatening existences. But obviously, such a loophole wouldn't appear. As the infection circle shrank and the poison fog in the outer city dissipated, Su Chi distinctly felt that these zombies were becoming crazier, more bloodthirsty, and also gradually more troublesome. As the safe zone shrinks, all the zombies are continuously growing stronger. It seems that everyone must find a way to become stronger during this period, or else, in the end, without having fought much, we'll all be annihilated within this horde of zombies. At this moment, Su Chi was also paying attention to the demon that was approaching from the shadows. Yet he didn't show any expression or make any movements. He was just a bit curious. The other party's speed of approach was quite fast, so they probably had some special equipment. With one swipe of his axe, he cut through 3 zombies nearby. Su Chi, holding the blood-dripping axe, charged forward. More and more zombies approached, issuing out crazed howls. This was a vicious cycle. Once you used a gun, the gunfire would attract even more zombies, and while you might want to temporarily avoid them to find a safer path, the infection circle behind wouldn't allow it. So, one had to break through the encirclement in one go without stopping. Of course, this was only true for most people. Su Chi could very well shoot his way out with the cricket gun, or use the Annihilation Bee swarm, but the latter only had one chance to use. Furthermore, he was also concerned about the demon that had been following behind them, lying in wait quietly. He feared scaring it off, and at that time, the dangerous presence had already arrived quietly. That ice-cold gaze was already prepared, with a faint, fatal, murderous intent spreading. And they didn't react, running through the horde of zombies, with the sounds of gunfire and axes ongoing. It coldly stretched out a hand. The ice-cold bullet was ready, and now was a close-range ambush. The power of the enhancing potion had somewhat lifted it out of the ordinary human range, but this was also within the rules. Here it came. On the streets, the zombies roared and pounced toward the two live targets. The horde here was obviously denser than before. Jeline growled lowly, holding a gun in his left hand and an axe in his right, feeling the strain. Su Chi, too, swung his axe, clearing the way. It was at this moment that its pistol fired off a shot, the rapid bullet with its cold friction. In an instant, bang, hit Su Chi directly. His eyes were cold, although the first choice was to take out the heavenly destiny people who carried weapons. But just now, somehow, as a demigod, it felt an unconscious twitch in its brow, and the gun automatically aimed at Su Chi. This guy had no weapons. It was guessing, perhaps he had obtained something like hand grenades. The commotion at the top of the building was probably because of this. So now he was only holding a fire axe without other means of attack. And the next moment, Su Chi was hit by the bullet and fell to the ground, clutching his chest. "Brother Su!" Jeline's eyes widened. He roared, firing directly toward the direction of the demon. The demon calmly watched this scene, easily dodging the bullet with a simple movement. Foolish. Having gone through countless years of survival games, do you think the group of Black Cat survived by luck? The body can become ordinary, but the soul will not. Everyone has a terrifying capacity for premonition, reflexes, extraordinary awareness. Unless you have firepower coverage or overwhelming equipment, it's not so simple to kill someone prepared with ordinary firearms. That's why I've been following in secret for so long, choosing to suddenly attack with gunfire. Jeline's gaze was heavy as he pulled the trigger again. The demon in front of him slightly shifted, and, anticipating the action, dodged once more. And Jeline couldn't swap the bullets in his gun in time because the zombies had surged forward again. Demon stood in the distance, strolling over. "It seems you still don't understand," the demon said while approaching. "You new heavenly destiny people are too naive compared to Black Cat and his kind." Though its words seemed dismissive, its motions were anything but being fully prepared to strike Jeline down. Those who walked in the sequence were no simple beings, and even with absolute advantage, they aimed to kill with a single blow. Jeline knew the danger was imminent, surrounded by a horde of zombies attracted to the blood on him like poison, wanting to break through, but in the next moment, Demon's bullets precisely targeted his projected escape path again. Jeline was also on guard and, with great difficulty, barely dodged the attack. Then, with a low growl, he pulled out an energy drink and chugged it. In the next instant, Jeline's entire body burst forth with a remarkable surge of strength. With a mighty leap, powered by more than human explosive power, he vaulted 3 meters into the air, axe in hand, lunging towards the demon. Demon narrowed his eyes and paused briefly. "So you've also got your hands on something enhancing? But it looks like it won't last long." The fire axe, with its ferocious burst of strength, charged at it. Demon had no intention of engaging at close quarters with him in such a state. Through countless ages, each of them was cunning enough to easily overcome, without taking any risks. Then, without any hesitation, It utilized its 3D maneuver gear to spring into the air. And at that moment, Jeline, who had been charging forward with roars, suddenly showed a hint of change. His explosive onslaught abruptly halted, and he fell to the other side, shouting in the midst of it all, "Su Buxian! Here!" Demon's mind was shaken, instinctively sensing something amiss. In the blink of an eye, it noticed Su Qi, who was assumed downed, now standing beneath, holding a little cricket pistol, squinting and aiming at it mid-air. Missed? No. It was hit, but without a scratch. That little pistol. Its appearance was ridiculous, yet it instilled a sense of danger in the demon. But it was still not panicked, thinking it could easily dodge in mid-air, all attacks considered. And the next instant, Su Qi formed a word with his lips. Demon felt a pang of alarm, for reading from its lips, it seemed to be the word boom. Boom. But normally, shouldn't it be bang? And the next breath, its question was answered. A horrifying blast of energy erupted from the little cricket pistol, an unavoidable beam of energy, directly obliterating the demon. Demon's pupils contracted, its eyes bulging in shock. You! But before its voice could emerge, its upper body had already been penetrated, and the surrounding zombies, eyeing the charred body that fell, swarmed excitedly towards it and began tearing it apart. Jeline, witnessing this scene, had no time for elation. Capitalizing on the effects of the drug, he wielded his fire axe, cleaving through the mass of zombies like Zhao Zilong in a deadly dance. "Brother Su, let's go." Su Qi glanced at the destroyed equipment and the empty syringe that had fallen. His brows slightly moved. Enhanced. Huh? He didn't linger, immediately dashing forward. "Be careful, I'll open." Jeline was ready to take on more pressure for Su Qi. "That won't be necessary." Su Qi, already bursting forth, interrupted. "Just head straight on at full speed." His rapid and astounding explosive power was fully displayed, effortlessly sweeping away any zombie that blocked their path. No helping it. I'm not slacking off. Demons are trickier to kill than imagined. Without some acting, how could they fall for it? And Jeline, looking at his splitting axe, fell silent. Even the teammate was part of the act, huh?